Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our audience from around the world. Welcome to the October 26th episode of the Digital Health Symposium, where you get your best in evidence and best in technology in medicine and healthcare delivery. My name is Stan Kichanowski. I chair HITLAB, and I am excited to see everyone joining in from all over the world and becoming a part of the community promoting the very best in evidence for healthcare and medicine. Again, we have a lot to cover today, so we're going to jump right into it. Again, thank you to our sponsors, the Merck Global Health Innovation Fund, Helix VM, FFF Enterprises, the AARP HTech Collaborative, and Metadata. Again, we're really happy to have everyone here with us. We've got a full program lined up today, including an interview with the Merck Global Fund President Bill Taranto to kick things off right in 2 minutes here, and then jumping into a physician who's helping treat patients in Africa in the war-torn areas of that continent. Dr. Mohammed Babi will be joining us and talking about his experiences and how digital is helping some of the most in-need patients in the world. And then we'll be jumping into the meeting with Ainsley Bowen, HITLAB's only Ainsley Bowen, and Alicia Staley from Metadata, and talking about how the world's leading clinical trial software platform is helping to expand access to underserved communities around the world as well. And again, remember, this program is focused on digital health and how it's improving equity and diversity across medicine and healthcare delivery. And then to end the first hour, remember, this is a 3-hour program. We're going to be talking about diversity and how that's improving, folks. The first thing we want to do as well is jump into the book giveaway, which we're excited to do every month. And this month's book is The Double Bottom Line by one of the most well-known leaders in digital health and certainly in healthcare ecosystem in the United States. Former CEO of a NASDAQ 1000 company, Donato Tramuto, wrote this book after years of decades of leadership here. And so the idea here is that the first attendee, the first person to come up with the right answer and actually answer this next question in the chat box on your Zoom channel. Please open up your chat box, if you will, and take a look at the chat box and then answer this question, if you will. And I know we're moving fast, but hang in there. If you could answer this question: communities, countries, and ultimately the world are only as strong as the health of their women, is a quote from which female leader? A, Eleanor Roosevelt, B, Susan B. Anthony, C, Michelle Obama, or D, Rosa Parks? And the correct answer to this question is C, Michelle Obama. And it looks like Leanne is the winner of our first book giveaway of the day. Remember, we're going to be having these every hour, so stay tuned and stay online and keep with us here, not only to enjoy the tremendous community of you meeting each other on the webinar chat channel, that you can toss your LinkedIn to, but also through learning all of the amazing things that the leaders are going and the different tech experts are going to be sharing here, and the scientists will be sharing on their evidence in digital health. And let's keep moving. So very excited to talk to today and introduce you all to one of the leaders in the digital health ecosystem globally, Mr. Bill Taranto. Bill, how are you?
I'm doing great, Stan. Thank you for having me today. Usually I'm on the interviewee side, so I'm on the other side today.
Yeah, we thought we would flip it around a little bit today because of the fact that, it's incredible what the Merck Fund is doing, just seeing you all doing what you do every day. And we wanted to make sure that the audience got a chance to hear it directly from you and talk more about what's happening from your perspective, where you see things happening from your perspective, et cetera. So again, just to start off, for those folks that don't know about your background and don't know about the Merck Global Fund, if you could start off with a little bit of your background and a little bit about what the fund does.
Sure. My name is Bill Taranto, and I'm president of the Merck Global Health Innovation Fund, which is one of Merck's two funds. It's a digital and tech fund at Merck. We also have a life sciences fund that's called the Merck Research Labs Fund. But our fund is a $500 million evergreen fund that I said focuses on digital and technology. We're one of the largest, if not the largest, digital health investor where we deploy over 100 million a year. We're mostly a growth investor, focusing on Series C or later, but we'll do A and B rounds occasionally, but we don't do any startup or seed capital. The primary area that we focus is across pharma services. So if you think if a pharma needs a service, that's kind of where we focus. So you think about R&D and clinical development. So things like AI and ML and drug discovery, could be target ID, new novel platforms, radiology, pathology, and of course, zero gravity clinical trials. We also focus on supply chain, manufacturing, and IT, but it's not the physicality of supply chain. It's more about the data. So you think in terms of, if Merck was going to build a control tower, almost like you see at an airport, how do we manage all the data around goods coming in and goods going out? So everything from fraud, trace and track, damaged goods, what's even the right way to ship something. We also still focus on the patient side. So we do a lot in caregiver support or, around things like monitoring, clinical decision support tools, care coordination. So anywhere that we can help the patient's journey. And then finally, we're still heavy investors in real world evidence and data, where we're trying to find globally access to data, but trying to understand outside insights and outcomes from that data. But again, the whole idea is around pharma services. We were established in 2010. Today, we have about 42 portfolio companies and been pretty successful, both financially and strategically to Merck.
It's incredible. I mean, just the breadth and depth of what you've done as well. I think just so many portfolio companies, 80 portfolio companies, and then the staggering amount of funds that you're deploying to help patients around the world, over $1 billion in the last 15 years, just incredible. Let's talk a little bit about the Breakthrough Alliance. So obviously, this is a group that's been formed through a New York City Economic Development Corporation grant in 2015 that was awarded to the Healthcare Innovation Technology Lab, HITLAB, which is, of course, the institution that I chair, and put together the Breakthrough Alliance with your help, Metadata, and a lot of other companies in the New York metropolitan area, Northwell, New York Presbyterian, Columbia Medical Center, et cetera, and Cornell. The idea was to help generate evidence to not only help populations in need, but also make sure that the institutions that are providing that kind of patient care and medicine understand what the best digital technology is to actually invest in and to actually purchase and deploy in their institutions. That institution now, the Breakthrough Alliance, New York City Economic Development Corporation has grown tremendously over the last 6 years, and it's now going global. But you're chair of that organization, and your leadership has really accelerated the growth of the Breakthrough Alliance with New York City Economic Development Corporation. Tell us a little bit about the Breakthrough Alliance and the benefits that you see, and then what you do as chairman.
Sure. So, the reason I joined was twofold. One, I like the mission of HITLAB, where they're actually helping organizations validate from a clinical perspective, whatever product or service that they have. And that's an important piece to growing a company. And I think people underestimate how important that is, especially in digital health. The other thing is, if you think about how healthcare works, it's all local and regional. It's about a community. And I was really interested in how you were thinking about, through the Breakthrough Alliance, building that community around patients, providers, payers, investors, entrepreneurs, anybody that's working within healthcare is part of that community. And the idea is, and how do we try then to grow that community beyond where we are, where we started, back in the early days in New York City. So most of my responsibilities, are helping advise, other leaders, yourself and your team, on how do we grow and expand not only what HITLAB does, but what the Breakthrough Alliance is, how we get beyond the borders of, in the sense, the tri-state area, and grow, not only within the United States, but grow globally. And one of the things that we're going to be doing in about an hour from now is I'm going to be interviewing our new head or chair of the European Breakthrough, which is going to be a really exciting interview coming up in an hour with Laurent. But that's the whole idea, is how do we grow? So part of my responsibilities, I think, are helping you grow and expand. The other is, being a champion of both the Breakthrough and HITLAB, and communicating with my peers of why it's important, supporting you within your programs. You do, like the upcoming November summit that we have, and then of course the big New York Digital Week that we're going to have in April of next year, being not only a sponsor but a speaker, but also bringing people into that community. So the real reason, I like the HITLAB and the Breakthrough Alliance is it's all about the healthcare community. And the only way to grow and improve patient lives and really expand healthcare is through a community. And that's why I joined, and that's why I offer my leadership.
No, I really appreciate that, Bill. And it's been so impactful. I think that overall, when you look at the Breakthrough Alliance and its mission, how do you see this, and how do you compare it to other institutions that are out there, and how do you look at it as novel and relevant in terms of what it's doing and why people should join?
Well, I think the interesting thing about the breakthrough in HITLAB is a little different than most communities that are out there. There are other communities like Health Excel, but that's more, outside the US. The breakthrough bridges the gap between industry-leading healthcare companies and the promising digital health startups that help shape tomorrow. So we have an important role about helping build companies. Most of the other organizations that I might be a member of don't do that piece, right? We're trying to build healthcare organizations, and not only that, we're trying to bring that community together to work together, which is a little different than the other communities. The other communities are more about networking. Yes, Breakthrough Alliance and HITLAB is a piece of it is networking, but it's really about building healthcare and better healthcare in the communities in which we reside. And I think that's a fundamental difference that we see through HITLAB and the breakthrough that we don't see with other sort of community alliances. And that's, again, back to my opening statement, why I joined, because I think that's an important piece that people don't they underestimate the importance of building really good, solid healthcare companies and a solid healthcare community that can work in an integrated fashion within that community to build out better healthcare. And ultimately, our goal is to improve healthcare and save patient lives.
And for everyone that's watching the program now, do go to the chat box. Check out Bill's LinkedIn profile. I just sent it to you over there. And again, just a tremendously generous person with time and comments and feedback for folks that are either starting digital health companies, that are in institutions that are trying to understand where digital is actually working. And you're looking for advice from someone who really knows the ecosystem. Contact Bill and get in touch with him. I'll also put it in my LinkedIn as well. If you have any questions or comments during the program today, just link in with me and message me there. That's the easiest way to get comments and questions in, since that's what I monitor the most. And Bill, just to wrap up, we've got a couple more minutes. The future of the Breakthrough Alliance and the future of digital health are so intertwined. You talked about need for evidence generation and efficient evidence generation, right? And when you see what happens at Breakthrough, no equity taken, no fees charged for the companies that are entered into the competition and are winning there. It's just an important thing to remember that the efficiency is critical. What's the vision of digital health for you? And what's the vision of evidence generation for helping digital health companies get going?
Ultimately, it's about making healthcare global. One of the things we're trying to do with the Breakthrough Alliance and HITLAB is globalize it in a sense. And as I said, we're going to be interviewing Laurent in about an hour about our first step in expanding in Europe. But what I see happening over time is further expansion in the US, getting a chairman in Asia Pacific, a chairman in Latin America, where we're expanding this globally, because healthcare is a global problem, right? And a cancer patient in the United States is either similar or the same as a cancer patient in every other country. They need better care. They need the right care. And can we bring the right types of tools, and in this case, digital tools, as well as the ability to validate those tools through something like HITLAB on a global basis? And the better we can bring, the community together from a global perspective, I think the better we'll be able to, 10 years from now, have better solutions for healthcare. And that's ultimately my vision of not only what we're trying to do with Breakthrough and with HITLAB is get it on a global basis, but build as much of the community as we can. Healthcare is just not a US problem, it's a global problem. And so the more we can get people to join on a global basis, that's what we're trying to do, is really expand this and look at healthcare more broadly.
That's fantastic. And I think that's tremendously appreciative, Bill. I know you're so busy, and appreciate you coming on to the program now and then talking to Laurent about Europe and what's going on there next year. And looking forward to seeing you online later in the show. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it.
Incredible. Everyone, just do link in with Bill. I can tell you that he is extraordinarily responsive and just is super generous with his time and efforts in building a digital health ecosystem, not just in the New York area, but also nationally and globally. And part of that, don't forget, is the Breakthrough Alliance competition. The challenge is extending its deadline, the overwhelming over 1,000 entries from companies all over the world. Remember, it's free research, no fees, no equity. So if you have a digital health startup, or someone who has a digital health startup, or even a company that's early commercial, but they need more evidence to get to the next level, click on the QR code, have them apply. Again, the application deadline has been extended to November 3rd. Midnight Eastern Daylight Time. Please have them apply. It's just an incredible opportunity to expand not only their evidence base, but also promote it into the ecosystem. And very excited to have with us our next guest, again, someone who is playing a critical role on the front lines of healthcare delivery and in areas of the world that we usually have very little exposure to in North America and in Europe. So just excited to have Dr. Mohammed Bobby with us today. Doctor, how are you?
I'm fine. Good afternoon, Stan. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very glad, excited to be part of you today. My greeting from Africa, especially today. I'm based in Mogadishu, Somalia.
Incredible. And such a resource constrained and such a critical area with so many folks suffering. Tell us a little bit about your background and what you do there.
Okay. Thank you so much, Stan. I'm a medical doctor. I'm in charge of United Nations some field hospitals in Somalia, as well in Sudan and South Sudan also. So I'm working remotely, like I'm working on the field as well. And my main work is to support the African Union troops, military hospitals in the field, to provide health care, health education, supply chain, pharmaceutical management in the field, as well as medical evacuation casualty management from the field to the higher level hospital level care, either in Kenya, Nairobi, or South Africa, to provide good health care. I also provide the training in combat tactile medical care during the war, so as a capacity building for the soldiers deployed in the field, as well as medical investigation, screening, pre-deployment medical tests before the soldier arrive in the field. Thank you.
Incredible. And Dr. Bobby, if you could turn on your video right now. We're not seeing video. I don't know if you have video. If you don't, that's fine. In the meantime, if you could also, the audience that's listening to this is just stunned. Obviously, it's amazing what you're doing in Mogadishu, in Somalia, and trying to provide the fundamental healthcare that everyone needs there. Tell us a little bit about the digital infrastructure that you're seeing and how digital technologies, whether it's even digital offerings through smartphones or even just using smartphones for voice communication, telemedicine, whatever you can do, and supply chain, it's either supply chain management or any kind of patient triage or syndromic surveillance, any of those activities that we see oftentimes in ecosystems in need in healthcare. How are you seeing digital provide assistance to, again, either medicine delivery or healthcare delivery?
Thank you, Stan. Digital health we are using, is like 6 months ago, we established a pilot project of telemedicine in Somalia, which is working perfectly. We are communicating with our hospital, all from the various sectors and the region. We get the information of the patient from the field. This helps us to make a correct diagnosis and make a decision on time, either to evacuate or to send to Mogadishu if after stabilization. This digital health telemedicine development also help us to provide health care education, promotion, and it can help a lot to prevent any outbreak. Recently, last week, we have a outbreak of cholera in one of our region, affecting a civilian population, which are very, very close to our troops. So the digital health for the doctors in this area are using the mobile phone. This mobile phone provide all the information of this outbreak, and it helps us to communicate with WHO, provide the number of people affected, prepare the kits and drugs to be deployed on time by helicopters, and also to make a contingency plan by quarantine the patient who are already affected aside, not to contaminate all the troops. It is very, very important for us, this digital health. And also, this digital health or for digital medication also has with those not all the area, but most of the area, the tools like a reminder. For example, you provide this vaccination, we can track the first dose which has been administered this date. What is the reminder of the second dose? It helps us a lot to do that. In this kind of situation, recently, as I said, the outbreak of this cholera, the health information is critical and very important, and it can prevent a lot and help our troops also. The data collection from the tools also is very important. No, and to help us to make a correct diagnosis, the treatment of the patients, and even if it's the civilian population who are living just across a road, they don't have enough resource or money to get medical care, we can ask the WHO or some international NGO to provide help. It's very important for us. And also to manage the health program. The health program in the post-conflict countries or the conflict country where I'm based actually also, this health program management system help us a lot to do the consultation, screening, and facilitate the access. Saying that in this war zone, either in Somalia, Sudan, the mental health is very, very important. The digital health help us to monitor the people with post-traumatized diseases, mental health, and also to help in case they need any evacuations on humanitarian ground. Thank you, Stan. Over to you, please.
That's incredible. I mean, that's a textbook almost right there, just to help our attendees listening to the program today understand exactly what is going on in such a conflicted country and with so many patients. And if you're listening to the program and you haven't caught up on what's happening in Somalia, I would recommend just typing in Somalia in Google and then clicking on the news icon at the top and catching up on what is happening in Somalia, just to bring about a greater degree of understanding and empathy for what Dr. Bobby is doing and how they're utilizing digital across so many different parts of the healthcare continuum, the value chain, if you will, from medication and supplies delivery through the various components of medication and supplies implementation, actually administering vaccinations and antibiotics, et cetera. So critical, so fundamental. We take it for granted in so many of the places that we live today because we're so lucky. But we have to remember that the human condition is not the same in the wealthiest 1 billion homes as it is in the lowest income 1 billion of homes. And again, the term of art that Dr. Bobby's using, the most conflicted 1 billion homes. And we see a lot of that these days. And it's getting worse, unfortunately. And so we do have really an opportunity, but more importantly, an obligation as some of the lucky people on this planet to do good work and to help out. Dr. Bobby, from your perspective, I know we're winding up your time here today. I would love to talk to you for hours, frankly, but this is something coming from one of the questions I'm getting on LinkedIn from the audience, which is, how can we help you? What can we do to help you and help your teams in Somalia and in other conflicted nations around the world that the UN is striving to assist? What can we do to help you all?
Okay, thank you so much, Stan. And any help will be very helpful, and it will be very fruitful. First of all, to facilitate the access to the health. That is the main challenge we have. If you have access to the most of the population to have this access, it will be very helpful and minimize the cost. So if we facilitate the access to the health, first for all, we'll start by facilitate the health information, education, sensitization. All those are important. But when we receive a support to facilitate the health care, it started like a mobile clinic. A mobile clinic, for example, will help to facilitate the health access. Mobile clinic, why? The war can move from one area to another area. So we are based now in point E. So tomorrow point E can be attacked. It can be attacked by Al-Shabaab, Islamists, or, then not only it can be attacked like this outbreak of cholera. We have to move from one place to another place. That is the mobile clinic. If we have the access to our to have a facility of healthcare, that will be very, very grateful and help and minimize and save a lot of lives in Africa, especially the zone which are affected by the war. And to tell you, we have more and more regions being affected. If you take from 20 before COVID pandemic to now, it increased from 8 to 15 regions now. So I have to deploy medical staff in all each areas. Of course, we are collaborating with Médecins Sans Frontières, some humanitarian NGO, or a lot, but not all of that. For security threats, they will not stay, they will go. So we have to reinforce our capacity by providing good health training, health information, promotion, and education. And any help providing will be very, very, very efficient and helpful for our communities. Most of those communities in Africa, they don't have access to healthcare. The insurance policy is not well established. So, and also how to reach, if you have to do the distribution of supply chain. I'm very happy you emphasize the supply chain. So we are, there is a project, there is a plan. They want to use the drone for distribution, because sometimes you want to send even the food supply with the medicine to some area. So, but the road is not secure. So this reduces the distribution of supplies to those regions. It's delay, but the delay will come with consequences. So that I can throw here. Thank you, Stan.
No, it's amazing what you're doing. And again, thank you very much. And just everyone's applauding all the good work you do. And Dr. Bobby, we look forward to seeing you at the summit in New York City in November 28, 29, and 30. For those of you who would like to meet Dr. Bobby and see him present on the main stage at Columbia University's Conference Center, at the Lerner Conference Center at 2940 Broadway, November 28, 29, 30, get your tickets for the HITLAB Summit on hitlab.org, and looking forward to just many, many conversations with him about all the good work he's doing and about his vision for the future and providing more services, more medicines, and more supplies to those in need in conflicted countries, not just in Africa, but in many other parts of the world that we're seeing these days. And certainly our hearts and need to go out to those folks. And we do have an obligation to do whatever we can to help them and when we can. So again, coming up now, and there's your code, by the way. Thank you, Ainsley. There is your code to join the HITLAB Summit. And you have, that's a very steep discount. Ainsley's going big or going home here. You will not see a discount that large for the summit like this. It is, again, 50% off until Halloween, trick or treat, October 31st. And again, do use that code to jump in there. And next up, we have with us, again, another person. Oh, we have a poll. And so we want to hear from you. We are opening up a poll right now. If you could go ahead and answer this question. We would like to hear from you. Do you believe that wearable devices, things like fitness trackers, smartwatches, et cetera, will have a positive impact on healthcare and wellness in the future? And this is a great time to see your results. We have so many folks on here from all over the world, and our audience and our community, obviously hundreds of folks and tens of thousands of people that are involved in the lab's work. And we'll be taking this poll data and we'll be publishing it out through a hitlab.org article coming up in the next week. So your answers matter. If you could just answer this question. Again, it's anonymous, nothing attributed back to you. So don't worry, you will not get in trouble for your answers. If you work for Google Fit or Apple Watch or Garmin or Samsung, you can still answer this question honestly, but we'd love to hear from you. So what do you think will happen? What will be the effect of having all these wearable devices, whether it's fitness trackers or smartwatches or again, now wearable glucometers, numbers of different devices, biomedical devices, rings that you can put on either from Circle or from the good folks at Aura. There's a lot of different wearables coming out these days. And do you think that this will have a positive impact on people's healthcare and wellness? And let's include in that, obviously, emotional and mental health. You saw the results of the study that came out on Monday about screen time, an international study, meta-analysis, amazing data there on exactly what does all this screen time do with not just the emotional wellness, but also the mental health of particularly pediatrics. That study focused on and being on screen as much. And maybe is that something we need to consider when it comes to wearables and constantly monitoring, that kind of data coming in on our biometrics? Do we need to see it daily? Maybe weekly is better. Is there a message fatigue and is there a toll, or is it good to be really on top of that sort of stuff on a regular basis? So again, we've got about a couple more seconds. If you could answer the poll here, would love to get your feedback on this. And we'll also be sending it out via email so we can have some fun collecting and finishing up the data there too. We've got about 10 seconds left on the poll. So last call for your opinions and what you're thinking there. And again, we'll push out the results so that you can see what we're doing and how we're doing and what folks are saying about this stuff. And that is the idea for this. If you have any questions, we're getting some questions about discount codes. Just go ahead and email me on LinkedIn or message me on LinkedIn, and I'll pop it into the Q&A panel, and we'll get your discount code on there as well. And so we've got the poll answered, and we will get those results out to you. And certainly in real time, we'd love to do that. Yeah, but the idea is that we have now coming up an interview with our own Ainsley Bowen and one of the executives at Metadata who are focusing on patient engagement, which is so important in clinical trials. On that note, handing the virtual microphone over to Ainsley. Ainsley.
Thank you, Stan. And I am so excited to have with me today, Alicia from Metadata. Alicia, thank you so much for being with us today. And if you give an introduction to yourself to our wonderful audience here today.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me. I'm really honored to be here today. My name is Alicia Staley. I'm the VP of Patient Engagement at Metadata. And by way of very brief introduction, I am also a 3-time cancer survivor. So I find these conversations about, what the state of health tech looks like today to be professionally and personally very interesting. So it's wonderful to be here today. So thanks.
Yeah, and thank you. And Alicia was actually on one of our past Women's Health Tech Wednesday episode where she dove more into her background and in personal story a little bit more. So highly recommend checking that on our YouTube channel. But in terms of for today, can you provide an overview of the current landscape of digital health collaborations between startups and enterprise companies, highlighting any major trends and recent developments that you've seen?
Yeah, I think just looking back, if we start, everyone seems to do these analysis and trend reviews by starting with the ultimate change that we had with the pandemic. So I think what you're seeing right now is we're sort of coming down off that incredible, hyper speed world that we were living in for a few years, addressing some of the key issues coming out of the pandemic. What I'm seeing really is the venture cap dollars and in the investments in health tech startup in particular seems to be slowing down a little bit. But I do believe that's also really good news for the industry, because I think what we're going to start seeing is a real focus on more collaborative efforts in the industry. So when there's a shrinking pool of investment dollars, we've got to get really strategic at how we're spending our time, our money, our resources to really make a quick impact, a quick hit, if you will. And what we're seeing is, we're starting to see startup organizations really look to solve what I'm calling mission critical issues that companies are facing. And we're seeing this sort of shift to focus more on the idea of return on investment or proving value much quicker in this cycle. So we don't see the longer runways that I think startup companies were sort of used to, particularly pre-pandemic and during the pandemic. What we're starting to see is that those long runways are starting to get much shorter. And what we really need to do is focus on providing value right up front. So what can these collaborations do to make an impact right away? And what we're seeing is the companies and the startups that are successful right now are building relationships around existing technologies and actually making them better, making them more efficient, making them more effective, quicker out of the gate. So I don't think we're facing a true technology challenge right now in the industry. I think we're looking to find better ways to repurpose and leverage the technology that's already out there in new ways. So this is, I feel like an exciting time.
Yeah, and it's so nice to get your insights on that. And in terms of talking about, increasing more of that value-based care, value-based solutions, how can we address, the historical disparities in access, especially to clinical research, and ensure that traditionally, marginalized communities are included in development and testing of these new digital health solutions or, current solutions that exist?
That's a great question. And I think that goes back to that idea of how can we solve these mission critical issues? So diversity in clinical trials, recruitment and retention when it comes to clinical trials is a key issue facing the industry across the board. So when you're talking about clinical research in particular, we can't get too far into a value proposition without talking about some of these historical issues that we've had with finding patients from a variety of different backgrounds and a variety of different communities to participate. And what we're seeing now is what I'm very excited to call empathetic technology, right? So we've got these technical solutions, but we're learning is we have to wrap the technology and empathy in a new way. So we've got ways to find patients through data and very critical analysis of data sets, data pools, combing through EHR records. But that's data. It's helping us find these patients. But what we need to do now is actually leverage that technology and those insights to build relationships. And I think this is the hardest part that some folks are really struggling with is we're really good with the data. We're really good with the technology. And now we've got to take it one step further and begin to build relationships and touch points where patients and community members feel seen, they feel heard. And we've got to find ways to use technology in a way that makes sense for everyone. We have to capitalize on what we're seeing in what I'm calling consumer retail tech, which is like your Fitbits and your wearables and your trackers. Everybody's got an Oura Ring now. Everybody's got a watch, an Apple Watch, Fitbit tracker. They're using their phone to track their steps. Like people are just getting more accustomed to having data available to them about their state of wellness or their state of health. We've got to capitalize on that and actually bring it into the clinical research ecosystem and make sure that we're building more to sort of humanize healthcare, humanize the tech, and do it in a way that's not going to scare people. We have to do it in a respectful way. And the companies that I'm seeing really sort of stand out right now are the companies that deliver technical solutions, but also deliver services wrapped in those solutions that help people understand the patients that they need to serve and they need to reach.
Yeah, and I would love for you to expand just a little bit more in terms of, what ways can technology be harnessed to expand access to digital health solutions, both in terms of that patient care aspect and as well as that clinical research participation, especially for these underserved communities that we, desperately want to reach out to.
Yeah. So a really good example that I've been working on with a company called Lazarus Cancer Foundation. Metadata and Lazarus have been working for a number of years together to really help them service and reach patients that are looking to participate in clinical research, but they might not have the right social structure, the social support surrounding them to help them through this process. So we've really worked with Lazarix to help find ways to speak with patient communities, to query their patient communities, to figure out exactly what they need to stay engaged in a clinical trial. Do they have the right financial resources? Do they have the right social support? Are they close to the clinical research site that they might want to participate in? So we're taking the data about the patient that might be a great fit for a clinical trial, and then going one step further to figure out what's the social, if you want to say social determinants of health, what are these key attributes that these people might need to have in order to stay engaged in this trial? And what can we do as Metadata and Lazarix? What can we do to support them? Are we giving them the right tools? Are we giving them the option to participate in a clinical trial in a remote fashion? Are we utilizing wearables and technology to pick up more information about how their clinical trial experience is really going? So there's a lot of different ways that we can start adding that empathetic layer to our technical stack, if you will. And I think that that's going to be critical for us as we continue to grow as an industry. So
yeah, absolutely. And I know as we're almost, near our time now, I just wanted to ask one more question in terms of, how can stakeholders also encourage greater participation from traditionally underrepresented communities in these studies and expanding these technologies? Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, when sponsors and sites and CROs and basically everybody in this the ecosystem of clinical trials, we have to really make sure that we're reaching out, building the relationships with everybody, but also understanding how the technology that we're introducing into our clinical trials, how they really impact the person. So we have to get smarter about making sure that we're not putting an unintended burden on a person when it comes to the use of technology. So there's this concept of technical literacy that we have to really be tuned into. And I think I saw a question fly by in the rapid fire chat here. Does technology, in and of itself begin to create burdens or access problems for clinical trial participation? And I would have to say, absolutely, it does. So if we're rolling out a solution, it's incumbent upon us as stewards in this industry to make sure that we're not putting more barriers or more issues into the workflow for the patient. So it's critical. It's critical. And it takes a lot of work.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Alicia, for joining us today and sharing your insights on this, and looking forward to seeing you next month at the summit as well. We'll have Alicia there live in person in New York. So looking forward to seeing you there and expanding on these topics more. And again, thank you so much for your time, and I will pass it back to Stan.
Thank you very much. You have a good day today.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. And again, thank you, Alicia, for joining. We have a quick special guest here that is a last minute ad. Her name is Jenny Ahlstrom, and she is the CEO of HealthTree and a leader in cancer. She's a cancer survivor as well. HealthTree is a digital health platform that is in Utah, and they're providing free services to cancer patients around the world who are trying to optimize their cancer treatment through better protocols and better options for medicines. And we're just going to do a quick 5-minute chat with Jenny here. Jenny, how are you?
I'm doing great, and I don't know if I can be seen on my camera. It doesn't look like it.
Just if you can look, well, we'll answer some quick questions here for you. First of all, tell everybody about what you're doing at HealthTree. First of all, tell everyone about your journey. I think that would be the starting point.
So I'm a multiple myeloma patient. I was diagnosed in 2010, and after a couple of years of therapy, just decided to jump into helping cure multiple myeloma from the patient side. So we built a foundation called HealthTree Foundation. We have 3 pillars of support. So we do the normal support and education that's personalized for patients. We have a connection pillar, or that's kind of our second pillar, where we do a lot of community outreach. And then our third pillar is unusual and unique, and is a patient data portal that we call HealthTree Cure Hub. So in that HealthTree Cure Hub platform, we aggregate patient data. So we invite patients to essentially opt out of HIPAA to join our system, And then we connect their medical records from multiple centers, the average myeloma patients being seen at 3 different centers. It integrates their EHR data, so that includes labs, genetics, prior lines of therapy. We pass that from by a medical team, so we have those teammates validate the profile. And now we have 13,000 myeloma patients who are participating in this data portal. And in the prior talk about clinical research, it's a way that we can help with this issue, accelerate clinical research, because we now have a relationship, a lifetime relationship with the patients. So we can go to them and say, hey, these clinical trials are open. We can go to them and say, do you want to participate in academic research? So we provide academic research for free to investigators. And we have a survey and study tool built into this data platform. And now that we've done it successfully in multiple myeloma, we are now expanding into 41 other blood cancers because we have this toolkit. So kind of unusually, we have an internal software development team, which is highly unusual for a patient advocacy organization to have. And we invite they have developed 1.7 million lines of code for 14 software products that facilitate. So instead of using a third-party learning management system for our HealthTree University, we built our own code. And we have a news website, we have a coaching program and a mentoring program. And all of those software pieces, including the patient data portal, are all put together with single sign-on. We have an older demographic. They're not as likely to use technology. And because they use it, they use it, they connect their records, they fill out their game card, essentially, their health game card, because they want to help accelerate a myeloma cure. And my data by itself is not that valuable, but data together, aggregated by multiple, tens of thousands of myeloma patients, is going to help us cure myeloma faster. So we can do chart review and data mining and, synthetic control arms. We can do that kind of work because we have this number one trust of the patient and the technology to pull it off.
And everybody in the room who's attending, take a look at the link I just popped in there, healthtree.org, and I also added Jenny's LinkedIn page, linking with Jenny for more information about this amazing announcement. They've been around for years. They've been helping patients all over the country for years, really optimize their cancer protocols. Even if they're in a rural area, they're able to talk to patients who are getting cancer treatments at some of the leading organizations like MD Anderson and Sloan and Mayo and things like that, and Cedar. So the idea is that really it's very, very much around patient centricity and patient empowerment. We hear about it all the time. We talk about it all the time. This is a not-for-profit, a 501c3. It's actually doing it. And I really would recommend you take a look at them. You have a lot to learn if you're looking at trying to develop communities and develop good product, because again, she's working with a world-class team. And then you have a lot to learn. Again, if you know anyone with cancer, to bring them into her network and what they're doing, because they are 501c3 based and they're mission driven. Just a tremendous opportunity to see all the good work they're doing. So Jenny, again, appreciate you joining with us last minute like this, and tremendous announcement. Congratulations on all the good work you're doing, and looking forward to catching up with you again soon. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Dan. Appreciate it.
Just incredible work from Jenny. Congratulations on that. And really looking forward to seeing this next duo talk here. We have a great conversation coming up here now with Dr. Glennis Mehra, who actually runs the NYU Biolabs, and Helene Rutledge, who's the co-founder and advisor to MEND and a HITLAB Global Fellow. And Glennis, Helene, welcome to the program. Handing the virtual stage over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Stan. And welcome, everybody. Thanks for having me. It's my absolute pleasure to start this conversation with Helene. MEND is actually one of our resident companies, and it's my privilege to see their journey unfold over the past few years. So Helene, I wanted to dive right in. We know that nurses are the unsung heroes and also the care backbone of our healthcare systems. But right now, given the pressures that we are all very familiar with, they're stretched. And I think MEND right now is providing an alternative that's really intriguing. So can you introduce yourselves, MEND, and just the journey that you recently started?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much, Glennis. I'm really happy to be here talking with you. So I have spent my entire career in the healthcare industry and saw that really a patient-centered focus has been lacking. And Men started out as a clinical nutrition company and really focused on providing functional nutrition to doctors for specific patient needs. But we realized that particularly in the orthopedic space, this is a moment when patients are open to change during this acute episode of care, but they don't really have the tools or the education or the training to really optimize their experience. And nurses are the key to that. So procedures like joint replacement and surgery that MEND is focused on are really benefit from the right nutrition, both before, during, and after the procedure, but also guidance and instructions on how to use the products, and also remaining compliant. And in fact, in all my years in healthcare, I know that patient compliance is one of the key factors to improving outcomes. And it starts with engagement. And engagement really only happens when it's designed with psychology and patients really understand, what's in it to them. How can they really improve their own outcomes by having agency with what they're doing? And with nurses, I found also that the best insights come from the people closest to the patients. So I created a care team model that works with nurses and nutritionists as the front line with the patients, with human first interaction through multimodal telemedicine. And this way, patients develop this personal relationship with their coaches. And we also have the ability to customize their care. So it's a win for the patients, for the caregivers, and it gives frontline workers like nurses much more flexibility in their life, a lower stress environment. And we find that it's really, really rewarding for them as well.
Now, how are you selecting nurses, and what's the reception been like as you try to recruit and also advance your talent acquisition model?
Yes, so naturally nurses have characteristics that are really great for this role. So we know that they're collaborative, empathetic, flexible, but specifically to transition to this telemedicine role, there are other characteristics that we look for. So they have to have technology adaptability. And in fact, one of the kind of interesting ways for selection, and it is personally interviewing them, is I always ask on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 is you have a flip phone and 5 is you know everything to do on your smartphone. Where do you sit in the spectrum? So when we ask nurses that, as long as they're like around a 4, we know that they're going to be able to adapt and pick up the technology that we're looking for them to use. But we also look for nurses who are good at self-management and scheduling, because with telemedicine, it's really important to be efficient about your time, because obviously you're having that, interaction with the patients in a real-time basis, but it's required to document and have those case notes and to, have everything that's necessary to pull it back into the healthcare system, particularly for reimbursement.
Yeah. And what's really interesting is that you, as I understand it, you're working with a demographic that's not necessarily technology savvy, and you're curating nurses that are technology savvy. So do you provide significant training? How do you bridge that gap between the patient and the nurses in terms of their embrace of technology and innovation?
So this is a really interesting fact, because at first we thought, if we're looking at an older demographic of patients, is this even going to work? Because our solution requires smartphone use. So, and also access to the internet. So we have data transmission. And what we've found is that there's a much higher adoption of smartphone usage of the older demographic than we thought, but there is limited use of, some of the features and functions. So we find that as long as our nurses can get everything set up, starting and running, and we actually have a care team model where we provide, technical support as well. Once the patients are locked into a routine, their compliance is really good. It's more getting over that frustration of setting things up. And once that friction has been resolved, we find that especially SMS, everyone knows how to send a text message. So we've designed it to be super easy to use just once we get that initial implementation done.
Yeah. And in terms of, I would imagine that it's relatively attractive for nurses to join your team and have a more flexible work schedule. But what are the other benefits that you're seeing the nurses that are joining you articulate in terms of transitioning out of the clinic and more into this remote telehealth platform?
So I think one of the things that's super important to mention is that investing in nurses is just so important, not just for them, but that it also makes good business sense. So for nurse well-being, when you have happy nurses, it's because they have more balance in their life. They're able to, manage their schedule and not have, the type of long hours. But these happy nurses then stay longer. We have less recruitment costs, less turnover, and then we can invest in the training. And because the training is part of human capital, it increases their skills, their efficiency, so they can provide better care, reduced errors, and better cost control. And all of this leads to the nurses getting a sense of accomplishment and pride. So they're able to know that they're contributing at a higher level. And we're really interested in the factor of nurse innovation. Nurses are problem solvers. And because they're on the front line, in traditional roles, they're not always listened to. So in a role like we have, they contribute to our solutions and improving them. And they're really insightful in terms of how to get to better care.
Yeah, I think that's a tremendous point that you're making. Nurses generally are dealing with a hierarchy that, we're all familiar with, and having them utilize all of the experience and with the resolution of the experience they're having, I think it's quite impactful. In terms of the additional benefits and the information and insights that you're getting from the nurses, how are you capturing that? And also, how is your platform leveraging that interaction between the nurses, the patient, and capturing the data for outcomes? Are you also using technology, or is there some other system in place?
Yes, absolutely. So we're really focused on the nurse interaction, improving engagement. So we, have the ability to see how the patients are interacting with the nurses, the messages that they respond to, and starting to segment the patients in terms of what types of contact they like. How frequent, what format, and then, what's important to them, and then those critical points in their care. So at different points of the journey, there's more or less interaction needed. So when we establish that relationship at the beginning and understand how they like to communicate, then we know that when we get to those critical moments, we're really giving them the access to the information in the way that's going to best optimize their outcomes.
Okay. And I wanted to touch on the business model a little bit. I know that Mend has transitioned into telehealth from being nutraceutical and clinically validated products for your patients that are going through recovery from surgery. And as you navigate this new territory, what have been the important anchors of this new business model in terms of the nurses, but also some of the data that you're collecting?
So we have multiple stakeholders, and I think that a lot of digital solutions have issues because of the question of who's going to pay for the solution. So basically, in what we've provided is a benefit to our hospital partners. And we have also leveraged insurance codes for reimbursement. And in that way, we're able to provide support to patients basically for the cost of a copay. So we're looking at a model where we're sharing the benefit with our hospital providers, but also not increasing a financial burden to the patients.
Okay. And are you seeing changes in compliance and outcomes?
Yes, absolutely. These are the feedback that we're getting from our patients is that the personal interaction is what like has given them information they never had before. We've had situations where patients were really not on track to be successful or to cancel their surgery, and the reduction in reschedule and cancellations of surgeries because we were able to maintain them in range has been a measurable outcome.
Okay, and just one final question here. I'd love for you to touch on scalability of this, and I know it's early days, but what do you consider to be advantages and also hurdles that has to be addressed as this model gets scaled?
Sure. So the key to scalability really is profiling your patient population and understanding what are those, let's say 20% that require more care. And that way we're able to automate more of the responses when it's not critical. So that's why I mentioned, at certain points in the patient journey, it's absolutely critical that we have, contact and we're getting them through that time. But then the other times when it's less critical, we can use a less high touch and lower cost way of interacting with the patients. And that's the key to scalability.
Okay, that's great. And in terms of the patients, as the patients are navigating through your system, there's a pre-surgical component, as I understand it, and there's the post-surgical component. Are you maintaining the same nurse, the same individual interacting? So is that a one-to-one relationship? And is it the relationship with the patient and the nurse, or the patient and the brand? What are you focusing on in terms of your marketing and development there?
So we absolutely introduced the concept of the care team early on, because it's frankly not practical to ensure that we're going to have continuity of the same caregiver for the full 6-month journey. So that relationship, even though it's formed with, one person one-on-one at the beginning, then in our care team model, we have on our platform, there's visibility to the case notes for each patient so that any member of the med care team can have the full information and be able to flexibly go between patients. So it is, to your point, the relationship with the brand, because we've built trust, and the trust starts with the individual, but then extends to the other members of the care team.
Okay, great. And in terms of the family dynamic, how much? So you're dealing with older patients, and I'm sure there are additional members. Is there interaction with just the patient, or are you also engaging in a more wider community or household?
So that's actually an interesting pre-qualification. So when we look at patients that are eligible for the program, they have to have agency. So for example, patients in nursing homes or assisted care facilities are excluded because we need them to be able to plan their own nutrition. However, family members are often the ones who, I mentioned that part at the beginning where they have to activate their technology. Many times our care team is talking to their children, getting help, setting things up. So the members of the family are absolutely part of that whole care ecosystem. But technically our care team can only interact one-on-one with the patient. But knowing that family dynamic and understanding the psychology of care and the social support that the patient has also allows us to focus on those that are isolated. They need more contact and more help. And that comes to that stratification of the patient population that I mentioned before.
Okay, great. Great. I think that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for your insights. I think what you're doing is tremendous. I have a family of nurses that have supported me through the years, and I think everyone who's had a loved one in critical care has benefited tremendously from the insights and the attention that nurses have provided in our system. So I can't sing your praises enough for generating a new model for yourself and also for these unsung heroes of our healthcare system.
Thank you so much, Glennis.
Yeah, thank you, Glennis, and thank you, Helene. That's a great interview and really touching upon an important part of the digital health ecosystem, which is where are we taking this digital health infrastructure within the nursing component? And so really appreciate all the good work that they are doing and can't thank them enough. All right. So don't forget to amplify your impact and bring about change through digital health ecosystem with adding your credential, adding to your credential a Breakthrough Alliance board membership. Join Bill Toronto, Glennis, and certainly Laurent and Michael on this amazing ecosystem leadership group. And the board members for the Breakthrough Alliance are folks not only from around the world, but also people who are leading the way in the digital health transformation. Click on the QR code there to learn more. The next hour is going to be loaded with good content and lots of new learnings in digital health transformation. And leading the way will be another book giveaway from Donato Tramuto and The Double Bottom Line. Again, a book that's really helping everyone understand how to enhance efforts toward empathy in healthcare. The first attendee that gets the correct answer for the next question in the chat box wins a signed copy of Donato's book. The question is, according to the American Cancer Society, which are considered the 3 Ps, as in a letter P, of health equity: people, places, partnerships? A, B, percentage population protection, C, proximity, prescription, passion, or D, perfume, pandas, and parachute? I'm really hoping it's D. I think that's phenomenal if we can get perfume, pandas, and parachute in there. Unfortunately, it's not perfume, pandas, and parachutes. Apparently, it's people, places, and partnerships. And well done, everybody, for responding so quickly. And A is the correct answer. And it looks like Keller was the one to pull it together. Well done, Keller. And remember, Keller, when you respond, click on everybody, not just hosts and panelists. Oh, sorry, Keller got B. So, oh no, the answer, Aditi is the correct answer, is the winner of the book. Aditi, congratulations for being the first one to pick off A. And David, I agree with you, pandas would have been fun, but that is not the correct answer. And so next on stage, we have, on our virtual stage, of course, we have the just one of the tremendous leaders, not just in the state of Maine, but also if anyone's been to Ogunquit, he is one of the extraordinary leaders of that beautiful village on the Atlantic Ocean in Maine, Donato Tramuto, but also a state leader in a lot of things policy oriented, especially health policy in the state of Maine, and a global leader when it comes to digital health and healthcare, the former CEO of a NASDAQ 1000 company, and the CEO of several amazing companies that have helped transform healthcare, and now an author and professor and teacher, just an amazing individual, Donato Tramuto. Donato, thank you for joining us today. And you'll be interviewed by Zina Manji, a global fellow at the HITLAB and a leader in regulatory affairs in digital health. Zina, I'll hand the virtual podium over to you.
Thank you so much, Stan, and such a pleasure to have you on the stage with me, Donato. You're the embodiment of a compassionate leader, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion with you on compassionate leadership. So in that vein, why did you see the need of writing this book? And can you elaborate on your purpose and your messages on, especially at this time of putting together these messages?
Thank you very, very much for having me here today. And in light of what's going on in the world and what's going on in the state of Maine, I'm reminded of a very great quote from Robert Kennedy. Quote, "All of us might wish at times that we lived in a more tranquil world, but we don't. And if our times are difficult and perplexing, so are they challenging and filled with opportunity." The events yesterday in Lewiston, Maine, reminds us that hope and compassion, I believe, are our best way forward. And we remember at this hour those who have lost their lives and the families who are suffering and the many, many, many people that have been injured. I think the purpose of the book, speaks for itself. I truly believe that the challenges that are before us, whether it be food insecurity, whether it be loneliness, as you may have read yesterday, 25% now of the world's population has classified themselves as feeling lonely. And I thought for many years when I was the CEO of Tivity Health and working with so many seniors that I thought it was unique only to the older adult population. And now we're realizing that it's not, that the younger population feel a lost sense of relevancy. And so I truly believe that we as business leaders, we as technology leaders, we have a responsibility not only to deliver on the bottom line of profit, we have a responsibility to address what I think has been an enormous amount of vulnerability, decay, individuals who are afraid to share their stories, individuals who feel all alone because they feel a lost sense of relevancy. And it is my hope that this is not just a book, it's a movement that we can help all people realize that compassion, which is empathy in action, that's the definition for compassionate leadership. It's just not good enough to have empathy anymore. You really have to take action.
Thank you, Donato. Indeed, I think we're faced with many things in the world these days that really challenge us on how we are leading companies, how we are developing products, how we are understanding what does patient first mean, and all of the different experiences that individuals have with understanding their disease or their condition, keeping well, and even trying to make the right choices for them on what treatment path they should take. And I'd like to ask you about the currency of business at this time. We often think the currency is profitability, and compassionate leadership traditionally, or perhaps one of the myths is that it's considered weak. But actually one of the quotes from your book is that the new currency for this generation is compassion. And I'd like you to talk about how compassion is the new currency, and why compassionate leadership is strong, actually. And what are your thoughts about the nature versus nurture about compassionate leadership? Can it be taught? And what's the right way to tackle this when we're leading businesses and also developing products?
Very good. There's quite a few questions there. So let me try to break it apart here, if I may. Too often, I think the language for businesses is numbers. And it's why, I labored in terms of what the appropriate title for the book should be. And it's funny because my publisher had submitted 50 different titles, and I dismissed each and every one of them and chose the double bottom line, because I don't think what we're saying is that you abdicate that language of numbers. What I think we are saying is that you expand on it. It's numbers. It's about love in a company. It's about getting to know your team, and not the team in the gestalt, but to get to know the team by individuals. Too often we default to say, I have the best team. And then when you ask the leader, well, tell me about each team member. Tell me about their whys. You rarely get them to answer it according to what the individual's passion might be, or what the individual's challenges might be. And so the book really is about not just creating a language in a business about numbers. It's about creating this value of bringing love and kindness and a new way of embracing your employees. It's very interesting. One of the things that we uncovered in the research of this book is that the average age of the CEO today in the American business is 59. By the way, that's the same average age of our elected officials in Washington. Now think of it. Today's workforce, a good percentage now is reflective of Gen Zers and millennials. And, by the end of this decade, they're going to represent 45, 50%, perhaps greater in terms of total population. They alone are looking for more than a paycheck. And if we want to increase productivity, we have to increase the notion that compassion and kindness really are the new currency for the new generation. And one of the things that I have been challenged my whole life, and I'll get to the third question about, is compassionate leadership weak? One of the challenges I've had my entire life in practicing compassionate leadership is that it's weak leadership. And that's nonsense, because what you're doing is you're turning around this approach of starting off with tenacity. What I propose is to start off with tenderness. Through the tenderness, you can get the trust from your employees and your colleagues and your investors, and then you can be tough. Too often we have this notion that we have to be tough. We can't share our story. Well, let me use myself as an example. For years, It's funny, I just interfaced with one of my former executives recently who said he felt my pain for the years that I never shared with anyone because I was a CEO of a company. I didn't want anyone to think that my life wasn't built with challenges, but I never shared that I had lost a significant amount of my hearing at age 8, that for 10 years I had a speech impediment, that I failed the 5th grade. I never shared that with people. I thought that that was like an embarrassment. And once I was set free to share my story, oh my gosh, so many other of my team members stepped forward and they would share their own stories. And before you know it, we started to build trust. And that's why I say there is a vulnerability decay going on in our society today. We are so afraid to share our stories because we listen to react. We don't listen to understand. And can compassion be taught? You bet it can. I was not always the compassionate leader I am today, and I still make mistakes. But one of the values of compassionate leadership is your own sense of taking the time to evaluate yourself, taking the time to acknowledge when you have made an error, taking the time to apologize to someone that you might have, injured during the course of the day. And so compassionate leadership can be taught. It's not weak, it can be tough. It's just a different way of how you approach it in the organization.
A lot of richness there, Donato. Thank you. And as you say, that's a lot to unpack even in your response. And I think one of the chats was, this is the heart of business. So if we take a moment to talk about technology, especially AI and development of technology, and looking at what's the purpose of the outcome of technology? What are we trying to serve? The humanness aspect and the patient engagement aspect takes on a whole nother realm there in terms of being compassionate about that patient engagement. So what are your thoughts about technology and building in compassion, and how do we develop? And also, what call to action do you think is necessary to continue?
Very great question. And you mentioned about artificial intelligence, and listen, data can get you so far, feelings can get you all the way. And I don't think that artificial intelligence can strip you of the importance of the feelings of people. You need to get to know your team. No matter what kind of leader you are, whether in the office or among your friends, getting to know your team is crucial. If we use artificial intelligence to ask the question, who was the 35th president of the United States? The answer is going to be the same, John F. Kennedy. However, if you ask, how is Donato Tramuto feeling today? I'm not sure you can get to the answer without having some integration of thoughts and feelings with me. And I think that's what I am worried about, is that human rights apply not only online, but they apply offline. And too much of, and that's why I use this line in my book, we are listening to react. We're not listening to understand. And when you really get deep in knowing the feelings and the stories of other people, you don't look at just the content, you look at the contextual overture of that individual. And I think that's what worries me, that we have to be careful that it's not 100% data. I've always said data can get you so far, but I do believe that feelings can get you all the way. And I think that if we can integrate technology, by the way, technology can be absolutely great. Good social media can help people understand issues in a way that perhaps they did not understand before. However, using it as the absolute, I think, could take us down a very, very dangerous path. And, I believe it has already with respect to, online harassment and other things that are plaguing our young. So I think we have to be, very careful to ensure that we're taking the best of what technology can offer and don't abdicate the importance of incorporating feelings. Recently, somebody recommended a book titled 10X by Dan Sullivan. And the beginning part of the book, I'm really moved because I'm in Florence, Italy right now, and I'm on my book tour here in Italy. But the beginning part of the book speaks about Michelangelo and, how back, in 1400, and I think it was 1460, the 15th century, how, he violated local laws by going into the hospital and basically dissecting corpses to really understand how the entire body was made up and how it really was put together. And it allowed him to really deliver some of the best, art of all times. And what that really hit me as is that even Michelangelo understood that you just can't take data and go and begin to be the best, artist. You really need to understand the human person. And I really think that that's what is missing, and why I think compassionate leadership can be a critical venue toward what I call the double bottom line, still delivering the profits and understanding everything about your people to ensure that they have the greatest opportunity to achieve their greatest potential.
Thank you, Donato. I think in summary, as a takeaway, as part of the life sciences industry and developing products, what I'm taking away here is this brings a whole nother angle to what problem are you trying to solve? And when you're using technology, what outcome are you trying to serve? And really another aspect of how you're putting the patient first, and it's about how you feel. So people follow not what you do, but why you do it. And thank you so much, Donato, for your time. It's been great to get to know you, and I hope everyone's equally has enjoyed this. And do check out the book. I think you'll really reframe how you think about what you're servicing as in healthcare.
Thank you so much. And my hat's off to you for incorporating this into your session. It says a lot about your leadership and your commitment to a more compassionate and kinder world. Thank you so much. And Stan, great to see you, my friend.
Yeah, great to see you too, Donato. And again, our condolences to you and all of your colleagues and friends and everybody in Maine. The state of Maine is suffering a loss, as is the nation today. And it's just devastating what's happened there. And I just appreciate everything you're doing to bring compassion to the world.
Thank you very much, my friend. That means a lot to me.
So again, just a powerful session today with Zena and Donato on bringing empathy to healthcare, and certainly digital healthcare. We need it more than ever these days. We heard about it from Alicia from Metadata earlier this morning. And now, obviously, with Donato just leading the way with this tremendous book, would recommend, if you are not one of the ones that are lucky enough to win it in one of the giveaways today, that you run out and buy it. I've got my copy. I've read it. I love it, and use it in a lot of my classes. And remember that for more thought leadership like this, join Breakthrough One. These are annual memberships that are again, we're offering just for today for the symposium audience. Offering a tremendous discount for folks to be able to get, and we don't want cost to be an issue for you to be a part of our community, and certainly enjoy a more detailed breadth of sharing evidence and our daily digital health evidence newsletter on what's happening every single day in the world of digital health and what's actually being adopted and what evidence has been released over the last 24 hours, obviously on the weekends, 48 hours, so that you're able to keep up with all the news and all the funding events and all the major diffusion, any kind of adoption events like contracts and stuff like that. So again, general, professional, executive, and global, use those discount codes to go ahead and log in and join the Breakthrough One and the hundreds of folks in that community that you get to meet with every month in cocktail hours and different receptions, virtual and on-site. So I'd love to have you be a part of that. And coming up next as well, we have with us a tremendous opportunity this time now to see the agenda moving forward here. We're going to be joined by, again, our Breakthrough Alliance Chairman, Bill Taranto, also the president of the Merck Global Health Innovation Fund, and with one of the newest board members, Laurent Van Leberg from Paris, the recent chief strategy officer from Sanofi, now an investor and also a board member of Breakthrough Alliance and chair of the Breakthrough Alliance Europe. Laurent and Bill, welcome to the program. Great to see you, Bill, again.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm really excited to talk to Laurent today. He's my new counterpart, and welcome, Laurent, to the Breakthrough Alliance and your new role as chairman of Europe. And I really want to talk today a little bit about your vision and mission and how it aligns with what we're doing here in the US. But first and foremost, I always like to start these out by asking, the audience may not know who you are or what your career is, and maybe if you can give a little background on your career journey. What was your career in health? How did you get to where you are? And then how did you end up today, agreeing to be chairman of the Breakthrough Alliance in Europe?
Yes, hello everyone. Bill, thanks for the question, and wow, what a session we just had before with Zina and Daranto. I was planning to join just for this session, but it was really worth listening to them. Quite some lessons actually. Still thinking about them. So moving to your question, I've been actually 25 years in healthcare, in BCG, in Abbott, and lately Sanofi. And actually, I was very lucky to be part of innovation stories all my career. In Abbott, launching Humira, and everybody knows the impact it has had on patients. In rheumatology, dermatology, or gastro. It was quite amazing to be on the journey. When I moved to Chicago, still with Abbott, I had the chance to head the virology, where obviously HIV was already a long time in the market products, but really kind of spending time with patients. I was in charge of Africa, where access was a big question, a really big question, and spent a lot of time with patient association, which, as you know, HIV, we were never doing enough given what patient had to go through. And then I did also worked on the program preclinical still at the time of HCV, hepatitis C, which, if everybody remembers, at the time there was no treatment. And all the companies were really working to get to a cure versus just chronic. And Gilead was the first one to get there. Abbott and others were following. I mean, it was just a big change, of course, in terms of innovation, but more important for patients. And then, I went to Singapore. I was there more like in commercial operations after 2 years in virology research. In Singapore, I was in charge of a large territory, from Russia to China to India and then Southeast Asia. And there, it's really more at the heart of that was the question of access, and how do you innovate to actually get, the drugs, the portfolio you have, mostly mature, a little bit of specialty, but to deliver actually care to people across all these territories, which is more a patchwork than really a very united one. So 10 years in Abbott and then moving to Sanofi, go quickly there. It was like 8 years, and the last 3 years as chief strategy officer, which there was more like where do we invest and where can we really make a difference as Sanofi in R&D and in digital for the patient. So at the end of these, the question was, do I continue? Do I move to something else where I can have an impact? And I decided to actually leave the company and focus on digital health, where I think it's the next big game change in healthcare. And with the experience I got in the four corners of the world and maybe four corners of pharma, maybe I can make a difference with all the people I work with so far.
Great career journey. And again, welcome to the Breakthrough Alliance board. So a lot of is going on in Europe in digital health, really all across Europe. Can you share some examples what you're focusing on and what you find exciting about digital in Europe?
It's quite amazing what's happening, and really it has changed over the last 5 years. I would say 10 years ago it was maybe an idea, and then progressively things developed. Now Europe is probably having maybe a quarter of all the digital health startups and companies that you see in the world, with the rest in China and of course a lot in US. I'll just pick a few examples so you can take a look at the company. I mean, I picked four actually. There was one company called Kurage, Kurage. It's really it's a neuro company. It's focusing on stroke. If you know a little bit about the brain, I mean, when you have a stroke, the brain has a memory. It loses some function, but you have a number of weeks to actually recuperate them, and the brain needs to mimic movement that you will get the body to take. So it's It's a legging for the moment. It has electric stimulation that helps reproduce this movement and then get the brain relearn. So quite amazing innovation. Don't hesitate to connect with me and I can tell you more about these. There is Bliss Digital Therapeutics. It's a virtual reality glass to manage pain. Quite interesting. This is not just a device or gadget. You really have some data that shows the effect it can have on pain. And this one is definitely taking momentum. Bite Flies, BITE, and then Flies. Very interesting set of sensors that you can use for neurorespiratory or cardio monitoring. Of course, you see a lot of companies like these. This one is quite advanced and also simple. So I look forward really to see the development of these. And then the last one I would say, and coming from pharma, there is always this question of decentralized clinical trial. And here you can think about pharma, but I'm thinking about patients. 70% of the disease are chronic. And for most of chronic patients, it's clinical trial. So if you can do clinical trial decentralized, it changes the life of patient. And here, really, seduced by a company called Linkscare, Lynxcare, Linkscare, Belgian company. Of course, being Belgium, I look at these two. Very interesting because it's very concrete, and they made some very good progress with. We see a number of patients they have in their trial, and also companies they work with. So really exciting.
Great examples. Appreciate it. Let's talk about the Breakthrough Alliance now. Can you explain, in your view, what the purpose of the Breakthrough Alliance is and what it means to you to be serving on the board now?
Yeah, I think it's a very important question. I think that the first thing I would say is that obviously, with you, with Stan and HITLAB, we've been interacting now for a few years, which I think is really the key ingredient before you get involved so much like now. And if I summarize the mission or the ambition of a Breakthrough Alliance, it's really to enable digital health global champions to emerge in US, in Europe, and in Asia. So you see the different elements there. And I would say the pillar that were really appealing to me is, one is the ecosystem. And ecosystem is obviously all the people, all the expertise we have around, all the people, which is very important because you come once to a HITLAB symposium, you meet a few, you come regularly, you start having many, but you also have a relationship, like me, with Stan, with you, Bill, and with the other, and progressively, I came a few times, and of course with COVID, the others was really video, but this is really ecosystem is key. Innovation, of course, we're going to challenge the companies and the ones coming to make sure it's really innovates versus what we have been doing. And then the third one is I really like the strong presence in each region. It's not me coming to defend Europe or Bill, you would defend the US or others. Our view is that, especially with digital health that is heavily based on data, and for which we need proximity to patients, it's really important to get these strong companies and champions that we like to see emerge across the regions. I think it's a very big distinctive factor.
Great. So let's again talk about serving on the board. As you think about serving on the board in the context of advancing diversity and equity in Europe, how do you think about that?
There are maybe a few elements, maybe two elements in this diversity. One is it's a bit of a luxury starting from scratch here as an investor. Is then I look at the whole space, and I can tell you that when I see the startups, we talk a lot about gender. I see a lot of founders, both male, female. I see equally strong on both, and the ones I'm investing now. Obviously, I have some also both male and female, equal quality. I'm not even have to ask the question because the criteria I apply are a bit the same. People from very diverse background, expertise, origin. Very interesting. I see some that are not scientists and become incredibly innovative scientific startups. Of course, they surround themselves with people. So I think that's our first role here is make sure we keep nurturing this emergence. And again, starting from scratch, it's maybe a luxury, but then let's start from scratch in the right way, stimulating this environment, not just being in Paris in a big city and getting all from there. But I think that's very critical. I think the second one that is important is digital health, actually, with the number of physicians that are going to decrease in the future, with people who are going to be remote from physician and hospital centers. I think digital can really help enable the equality of care and the equal quality of care for all the people. So that's what I'll certainly be focusing on in the board.
Okay, wonderful. I have one last question, but before we get to it, I understand we're going to flip the switch here, and you had a question for me, actually, Laurent, that you wanted.
Yeah, Bill, I think it would be important for maybe the audience here to understand from you, as you have this global perspective, and you have been actually working from the beginning to get breakthrough off the ground. I mean, how do you see this global focus that you have, and maybe what you expect from adding a European member and the European focus?
Yeah, so the way I think about it is, and I talked to Stan a little about this earlier, is, healthcare is a global problem. It's not just isolated in the US, and patients across the world suffer a lot of the same things. And what I liked about the Breakthrough Alliance is the community, and it's a community of patients, providers, payers, entrepreneurs, investors. And the idea is us getting together to build a better healthcare system. And Europe is a natural first extension of the Breakthrough Alliance, where there's a tremendous amount of digital health going on. Again, similar healthcare problems that I think we can begin to solve together. So my vision is us working together as a community where we're exchanging ideas and technologies with our European cohorts and back to us, and thinking about how do we bring this community together to work in a more integrated solution to provide the best healthcare for patients, because that's really what it's about, is improving and saving patient lives. So what excites me the most is that now I have a counterpart that I can work closely with in building this out in Europe. And as I told Stan earlier, the goal would be over time is building this out to Asia Pacific and Latin America, and really being a truly global organization. But that's my vision, is to really work closely with you and your counterparts to build out the same sort of fundamental activities that we have going on here in the US, but in a broader concept, because again, healthcare is global. All right, I have one last question for you, Laurent, before we wrap it up. We have a lot of Europeans that are joining us as part of the Breakthrough Alliance on the phone. And now that they have their sort of own new chair in the European community, those that are listening, any last words for them or pieces of advice, how they can be more involved?
Yeah, look, maybe a few is, the first one is we are really here to support you. And when I say we, it's obviously, Bill and I that you see, and Stan, but all the people listening from different parts of the world. So you need more people in your network, because you're looking for expertise. You want to get into US, or from US you want to get into Europe, or if you are from Asia, Latin America, obviously coming to these two big market. You want access to new customers, whatever needs you have. Obviously, the community here is very rich. So reach out and maybe start reaching out to me. I can direct you to the right place, or reach out to anyone else that you see here on the forum. And the second piece is, I think it's not just a menu you pick, but my advice is talk to us, and reach out to me on LinkedIn, talk to me, call me, and we can always see how to best this can help you. And of course, you can think about being involved in Breakthrough. If you want to first talk, it's, I think, the best way to make sure we identify what action to take to help your business.
Well, thank you, Laurent, for your time. Again, welcome to as chairman of the Breakthrough Alliance in Europe. And with that, Stan, I'll turn it back over to you.
No, fantastic.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Laurent. Thank you, Bill. And just a great interview, great back and forth, great exchange, and greatly appreciative of both of these incredible leaders in the ecosystem coming on board and working with the scientists around the world to not only design the best studies and make sure that we're getting the best evidence, but also promoting it across the various ecosystems. If you want to be on the board for Breakthrough Alliance and join Laurent and Bill on this effort to develop and to share and promote the evidence that's out there on emerging technologies and digital, please click on the LinkedIn, click on the QR code below and join us there. And next up, and we're about halfway through the program now, and just to let you know, we've got everyone from the American Medical Association to the folks from AbbVie, Downstate, NYU Langone, New York Presbyterian, Lilly, just a host of other major global entities in the healthcare system coming on, talking about what they're doing in digital and in medicine. And then next up along those lines is HITLAB's very own Jerry Antabano, talking to two of the digital health leaders from the American Medical Association, Amanda and Laura, about what's happening these days in the US healthcare system around evidence and digital health. Jerry.
Yeah, thanks, Stan. Thanks so much for getting us back on the program. Real pleasure to be here. And it's my pleasure, of course, to also announce more than speak with two amazing leaders who are doing some really dynamic things with the American Medical Association in terms of digital health strategy. I've got the pleasure of having Laura and Amanda join us again on the program. I think some of you who are long-time HITLAB Symposium and Summit goers will remember Amanda and Laura from a few summits ago, and they've been developing the Physicians Innovations Network with the AMA, which I think is going to be a really good presentation for us to really highlight how physicians across the country who are working in innovation are able to really connect and work with each other to make sure that they are addressing and collaborating on innovation to sort of highlight and address a lot of the issues that are prevalent around just equality and access to care. So Laura, Amanda, I'm going to hand over to you guys to kick off the presentation. If you want to let everybody know who you are, what you do, where you're calling from, and I'll pop back in at the end to ask a final question.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Jerry. It's so great to be here again with the HITLAB. I'll introduce myself. My name is Amanda Azadian, and I'm the product manager within the digital health strategy team at the American Medical Association. I've been with the company for about 4 years now, and I spent some time at Matter working with startups, and we often found that startups needed connection to physicians. So back then in my role, we reached out to the AMA and said, can we collaborate? Can you bring, literally it was just a couple blocks away between the Merchandise Mart and AMA headquarters. And that was kind of where the idea for the Physician Innovation Network began. But today we're going to talk about the Physician Innovation Network, as well as some additional resources that the Digital Health Strategy team has developed in collaboration with our colleagues in the Center for Health Equity. And Laura, my colleague, will be talking about that just after some of these pinned slides. So we can go to the next, and I'll introduce you to kind of our mission and vision. As some of you might know, the AMA does a lot of things, right? We have our policy and advocacy side. We have membership. We also have a really large nonprofit arm that focuses on missional work. And sometimes we're focusing on chronic disease management, and we have some really incredible colleagues that are working on that. We work in digital health strategy. So our enterprise goal kind of globally from that perspective is to make technology an asset, not a burden for physicians. We have some other colleagues that are working on burnout assessments and kind of defining what that problem looks like for physicians and helping organizations walk through those challenges. But ultimately, what we kind of all align to at the AMA is to promote the art and science of medicine and the betterment of public health. And so in that vein, you can go to the next slide and we'll show you some of the research that we did in 2016, 2019, and we repeated it in 2022. That QR code down at the bottom will get you to the full research. But for this presentation, we don't have time to go into all of the digital health trends that we saw then. And of course, a lot has changed since 2022, where we had a pandemic and massive uptick of telehealth. But this is a conclusion slide of how a lot of these forces that have been introduced through technology time-saving attempts have created some negative forces for not only physicians, but their care teams. And of course, then their patients who are losing out on that FaceTime and human touch with their care provider. And it's the quantity and pace of work. A lot of times that translates to pajama time for physicians. It's the professional liability or the conflicting payment models that, we have aspirations for value-based care, but sometimes we're falling short on that because of the situations in our payment models and burdensome quality reporting that ultimately falls on that care team to try to address. And so when we think about that from an AMA perspective, we think, okay, how do we, take some of these conversations that we know are happening in advocacy, we know are happening in our House of Delegates with our members, and try to make that physician voice heard easier and more often in the process of the solution design, so that we don't end up with a situation where EHRs are kind of forced onto physicians and said, hey, this is the technology that you will use. You don't really have much of an option. We want to include them in the conversation much earlier. So the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about how we've really boiled it down to 4 key questions. And when innovators or solution designers, entrepreneurs, or established companies that have a product in market are approaching physicians or clinical care teams, maybe that's the health system administrator who's actually going to be deploying that on behalf of the care teams, these are 4 key questions that must be asked. Oh, thanks, Raphael. I'm seeing that the QR code's a little tough to see. We can drop those in the chat. This QR code in particular, maybe it's cut off because of the aspect ratio, but this goes directly to our digital health research. So if you type that into Google, AMA digital health research, you will find it. We are happy to put that in the chat as well. But it's 4 really simple things. Does it work? And how? And is it a black box? And if the black box misfires, am I going to be liable, or will the person that manufactured that black box or that AI be able to explain what happened? So that kind of goes to the first 2 questions. Will I receive payment? And the second question beyond that is, how will I receive payment? How will my team have to submit for this payment to be established? And we have colleagues at the AMA who are working on a CPT developer program that they've deployed to help solution designers understand what CPT codes are relevant for me, and how will I help this care team actually receive payment for what we're suggesting and putting forward. And then the 4th question is, will it work in my practice? Will it apply specifically to my practice? And Dr. Jesse Ehrenfeld, our AMA president, has really been transparent in describing the situations in which he has been an in-hospital innovator, and developed a solution in his anesthesiology practice that applied in an adult setting very well. And then they sought to implement that in a pediatric setting. And it was difficult. He was getting calls saying, Dr. Ehrenfeld, I'm not happy with this deployment in the pediatric setting. And so he's been a really great advocate for us as we try to share this resource with the industry. We can go to the next slide. How do we seek to bring these better solutions to market? Going back to that enterprise goal, it's through a platform that's called Physician Innovation Network. We call it PIN for short. It connects the dots between physicians and companies seeking to create those conversations about, how do I improve? Maybe you need a clinical validation study. But before you get to that piece, and before you have the investment dollars to get to that piece, who are the clinical stakeholders that you bring into a conversation early? Who do you need to have on your board? How can you reach out to them? LinkedIn is, of course, a really important resource for that. Accelerators and incubators are collaborators, like groups like HITLAB and many others are really important for that. But this is a free resource, and it's really just a free database of 19,000 users to date, through which have been created 8,000 connections. We do this in a number of different ways. One is a self-service platform where you create an individual profile, represents who you are, knowing that I'm Amanda, right? I represent different perspectives. But at the end of the day, I might also have a company that I want to represent, and I build a company page to represent what my organization is doing and what key questions we have for subject matter experts. And so those represent what we call opportunities. It could be a job posting. I'm looking for a co-founder or a medical advisor, or a contractor that can help build out a UX. And then we present it to subject matter experts who can say what they like and what they don't like. Or it can be a one-off conversation, because we all know that relationships develop, over time. So next slide, please. This QR code, I hope you can see, this goes to the URL platform. And we do host in real life experiences of the Physician Innovation Network. We kind of act out what the platform is and does on an evergreen and virtual setting. We do this on stage. And so we brought 10 physicians to HLTH, or Health, as well as Vive. We brought them up on stage. They were from all corners of the country, all different specialties, all different experiences with digital health. Some of them have written books, actually. The physician featured here, Dr. Joshi, has written a book about implementing telehealth. And some physicians are straight out of practice, and they are so focused on patient care that no one really bothers to ask them about their thoughts about implementing technology into their practice, but they're experts in it because they're running their own private practice and they know what it takes. And so what we try to do is kind of break down the silos involved in getting connected to them. And we put physicians up on stage and we ask them to say, who are you? Wearing all of your different hats, right? You're not just a physician. You might be a caregiver at home, and you might be a patient yourself. And you have really valuable feedback from all of those different perspectives. And PIN is designed to kind of host conversations from all of those different perspectives as well. Next slide, please. We're going to be able to share a bit more resources that are relevant to this audience, I hope. But just kind of as a recap, the holistic understanding that we have of the digital health ecosystem is that we need to have people at the table from diverse perspectives. We need subject matters experts that can say, hey, this is what I can help with. These are the different hats that I wear. And oh, by the way, this actually is a great opportunity for a lot of subject matter experts who are so focused on their patient care to have some expanded and diversified sources of revenue where they can maybe consult with certain companies that they wouldn't have otherwise had access to. And then on the solution designer side, we invite you as designers, whether you're an established company pivoting a product or starting something new and you don't even have an organization yet, to say, hey, I have some regulatory questions and I want to talk to someone within the AMA. Hey, I'm looking to build out my team and have conversations to start certain initiatives. You can post that as an opportunity on PIN once you join. And it's free to join no matter who you are. And it always will be. And we have the opportunity to then promote the questions that you are asking for the innovation community. So I'll turn it over to Laura next, who will talk a little bit about additional resources and how that relates to human rights and access for others. And we'll come back for questions. So if you have any questions for us about PIN, feel free to type them in the chat.
Thanks, Amanda. And hi, everyone. My name is Laura Fritchie. I'm a project administrator on the digital health team. I've been with the AMA collectively about 4 years. I did my administrative fellowship and I went to work in a healthcare organization for 2 years. And while I was gone in that 2 years, there was a lot of great work that was happening at the AMA around equity that I wasn't aware of until I came back. So I kind of figured maybe you all are not aware of this as well. So I wanted to share a little bit more of the work that the AMA is doing in this space. And this is work that our colleagues in the Center for Health Equity have been working on. So for background, as we think about promoting the art and science of medicine and the betterment of public health, as Amanda mentioned, we have to think about how we're going to embed racial and social justice within that work, as well as recognizing some of the kind of harm that the AMA policy had in the past. So in 2018, the AMA House of Delegates met for their biannual meeting, and presented at this meeting was this plan for a continued progress towards health equity. And out of that plan came the development of the Center for Health Equity in 2019, and also the hiring of the AMA's first Chief Health Equity Officer, Dr. Aletha Maybank. And so this image here, this is the 3-year roadmap following the 5 strategic approaches that the AMA is using to advance health equity. We have embed equity, build alliances and share power, ensure equity and innovation, push upstream, and foster truth, reconciliation, racial healing, and transformation. And I put in the red the ensure equity and innovation because the resources I'm going to highlight are specific to that. So the principles of equitable innovation. This was a set of principles. It was co-developed by the Center for Health Equity, the AMA's External Equity and Innovation Advisory Group, and the Greystone Group. And then also it was created with input from the AMA innovation and equity stakeholders and more than 30 organizations that are kind of leading work in health equity in the health innovation space. And as I mentioned, these principles, they work to address the approach that I showed in that kind of framework, the ensuring equitable structures and opportunities in health innovation. And I don't think Amanda mentioned this, but on the Physician Innovation Network, which you got the QR code, these principles are linked within, it's called opportunities. So this is kind of embedded. And we really hope that when people are building out solutions, they're referencing these principles as they're building solutions. So this sparked the InfoHealth Learning and Action Community Initiative. It's infohealth.org. And AMA launched this community in partnership with founding collaborator organizations. This is the list of them. And these are folks that are committed to helping strengthen, amplify, integrate the principles that I just shared with you into the work that they're already leading at the intersection of health, equity, and innovation. And what this group does is they really serve as a community. They invite health innovation funders, solution developers, solution purchasers to engage with one another, to learn, inform, gather feedback on policy and system change efforts, all focused on advancing equitable health innovation opportunities. So I encourage you to check them out. And then an example of something that came out of this community was the toolkit. This is the Equitable Innovation Development Toolkit. It came out in 2022 with that group of the collaborating organizations that I mentioned. And the toolkit sought to help solution developers understand how a health product or service might advance or hinder health equity by providing these kind of self-assessments. So as folks are going through the toolkit, you'll see here there's 10 actions. Each action has a kind of a self-assessment for these groups as they're going through to kind of see where they're at in this process. This is an iterative process, and the Center for Health Equity is currently seeking to understand how this initial version of the toolkit could be leveraged more effectively as folks are starting to use it. One more resource I want to share with you all before we take any questions. We just released this Health at Home brief, and it was released as part of our Future of Health work. And it looks at findings from literature, from subject matter expert interviews, and then interviews from lots of different organizations. And it really develops a framework to see the types of services that are being delivered in the home setting and what's needed to support that, especially as we're seeing these advances in digital health solutions. And I wanted to bring this up today because as we think about social determinants of health and how to better address these gaps, we know that care teams being able to access a patient's home environment, it gives them a deeper look into some of those social determinants of health, allowing for that more personalized and tailored care. So this is just something else to keep in mind as we shift, as we see shifts in care models, as we see more people going in the home. Amanda and I were just at the health conference. That was a big topic there, was health at home. And so we want to think about, as we're providing care, where we're providing care, how can we build out these programs to accommodate these needs as we start to see, oh, we're seeing all these things in social determinants of health. Let's make sure we can address these as we're moving into these different care models. And also, here's just our contact info. We'll open up for questions. Feel free to reach out with us if you have questions on any of this, if there's anything else we can share with you.
No, this is fantastic. And we're out of time. If there's any questions, though, please link in with Laura and Amanda on what they're doing. This work is fantastic. And this is really such an impressive platform. You guys have done such an amazing job in putting so much together, and obviously really appreciate the activity around, especially for physicians who are so in need right now for better solutions, and really given the burnout rate with physicians and given the economic circumstance, especially for folks like OBGYN and whatnot. It's a critical time for given ridiculous malpractice rates that OBGYNs are facing. It's a critical time for everyone to be working alongside our physician partners and helping them out. So again, thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you to the entire team. We appreciate it. Talk soon.
So we have a lot to cover in the next hour. AbbVie, New York Presbyterian, Downstate, just a NYU Langone, Eli Lilly, and numerous other institutions. Takeda, the CEO, the president of Takeda America, joining us. We have a lot coming up in the last hour. It's a grand finale. But next up is, again, HITLAB's own Jerry Antamano. And actually, I'm sorry, no, it's myself. And I'll be talking with an executive leader from Mount Sinai Health System. Again, another major brand in the New York ecosystem. Hi, how are you? Can you hear me? I can't see you. Sorry.
Hi, Stan. Yes, I can hear you. My name is Fariha Ahsan, and thank you for having me here on today.
No, it's fantastic. I really appreciate you joining and again, spending time with us. We know you're so busy. So for the HITLAB community, could you tell everyone a little bit about what you do at Mount Sinai?
Of course. So like I mentioned, my name is Fariha, and I'm an immigrant to the country. I came many years ago to go to college, and I've been here since. While in college, I was a first-time entrepreneur, and since then went back to school a few times, worked across a number of healthcare institutions, actually, that you mentioned on this call as well. NYU Langone, New York Presbyterian, where I was part of the team that helped open up the David H. Koch Center, oversaw digital health and innovations when the pandemic hit, and then moved over to Mount Sinai Health System because of this unique opportunity at the Diversity Innovation Hub. And here at the Diversity Innovation Hub, the work that we do is to increase the capacity and representation of diverse founders in healthcare innovation, and drive digital health equity across the healthcare system, and across the partners that we have in the healthcare system and externally to the healthcare system. So it is a big goal. And, we do it through a lot of different means. We have 3 strategic arms. One is around our entrepreneurship suite, in which we have trainings, mentorship, funding, capital, and incubator for first-time founders who are addressing inequities and social determinants of health. So we have that entrepreneurship suite that we run. We offer fellowships within the Icahn School of Medicine, as well as our graduate school, to those who may not be as familiar with the innovation and entrepreneurship space and with health tech, to give them that exposure through summer fellowships and through gap year opportunities. And then lastly, we do a lot of work in digital health equity. I co-chair the Digital Accessibility and Equity Committee for Mount Sinai Health System, have launched our AI and Ethics Committee, and we do a lot of industry leadership and as well as consulting.
That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. And tell us a little bit more about some of the major issues that you're facing right now as a New York City ecosystem stakeholder, and just in how digital is affecting some of those responses.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I guess, especially in the sphere that we operate in, right? Especially when we see digital health, the digital health revolution, it follows the larger digital revolution. And we are seeing, right, the impact of the inequities in the digital world as it exists. You see ChatGPT coming out with different answers for different groups. See data is missing for large populations. Representation is missing. Access is different. And so what does that mean, right? And also Laurent mentioned this earlier in his presentation, investing. That is a huge piece in driving equity. Who is creating those tools? Who is being funded to create different tools? What tools are getting the traction, the partnerships? And so we see that in digital health equity, right? Digital health equity is the idea that you have to be inclusive and thoughtful in every stage of ideation, design, development, deployment. And we see that there's an underrepresentation of minorities and women and people from rural spaces in each of those stages. And where that trickles down, and many of us may be familiar with this, is different spaces like clinical decision support systems, right? We have studies out now that talk about kidney transplant rates and CDSS systems being different and suggesting differently for Black men. Pulse oxes, and we saw the inequities with that during the COVID pandemic. We know pulse oxes to be biased against darker skin tones. So just seeing sort of that and continue to stay on top of it, while also understanding the pressure to continue to launch innovations, to continue to innovate in digital health, while being iterative and inclusive in the process.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and I think it's a big deal these days, given the fact that there's so much strain on the New York healthcare system, just with the number of folks in need who are living in New York City. New York City's also always been a home to new populations moving in and helping out, again, like the Statue of Liberty says, the poor, the tired, the whatnot. And so I think the idea is that we need to figure out a way to do that better. When you're looking through your trove of tools and technologies that you're bringing together at Mount Sinai, what are some of the components that you're seeing are, and what's the role of technology to create a more equitable healthcare system in the New York City metro area?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I'd say, and something I've been so proud of with the Mount Sinai Health System, and specifically our Office of Diversity and Inclusion and their data team, is the first step is to capture data, right? We had so many patients whose demographic data we just had no capturing of. And in the last few years, we've had an uptick. We've done a lot of effort as a healthcare system led by that Office of Diversity and Inclusion. And we have 92% of data capture in terms of understanding demographic information of the patients who we are serving. Now, with that data, right, now we can better analyze and understand the patients that we are serving. So one of the things that the Mount Sinai Health System has done is lead remote patient monitoring for those with chronic care conditions. And I think it's interesting because when we look at the global global and also national digital health adoption rates for Medicaid users, it's the lowest. There's a lot of different digital determinants of health that have to be considered. But within the Mount Sinai Health System, and specifically within this remote patient monitoring launch that we've done for patients with chronic conditions, so including chronic kidney disease and chronic heart failure, there's been a utilization of across 90%. And that's because we've been very inclusive and thoughtful of all of the different barriers that could exist, including giving out digital devices, including understanding what other barriers are existing across the social determinants of health, and how we can partner with others, both within the Mount Sinai ecosystem, but also broadly across the city to address those. The digital technology partners at Mount Sinai Health System also launched a partnership with the New York Public Library to increase access to the patient portal and education for the patient portal for many of our users who may not have tools at home and devices at home and connectivity at home to be able to utilize the library in accessing and doing telehealth visits and accessing their patient portal. The Diversity Innovation Hub also partners with the Silicon Harlem, which is a New York City-based not-for-profit that is dedicating to provide affordable internet access across public housing in Harlem. And, I think it's the being inclusive and thoughtful and considerate as to every stage of the process in implementing digital health tools and digital health technologies.
Yeah, and this is everything you're outlining here just resonates so much. And so last question, we're running a little bit behind. I'm getting the flair from the producer here. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing as you're developing all of this, as you're implementing these? What are some of the challenges that you're seeing? Obviously, it's a big lift to bring diversity and equity to our healthcare in New York City metropolitan area. What are some of the challenges that you're facing, and how can certainly the HITLAB community help out with that?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking that. That's a really important question. I'd say a big piece, right, of every digital health technology, digital health tool there is a rush, right, to launch. There is a rush to get out there, to make it accessible and make it out there. And I think part of it is to understand how we build in iterative cycles to collect both data and feedback and reassess. A lot of times, in my experiences, I've seen that, and from working with many entrepreneurs across the system, technologies are being launched and there's no iterative process to it. So how do we continue to build on top of it while realizing that there's populations missing? How can we launch empathy labs to better understand how different users can run it, operate it, what the barriers might be? It's important to understand who is missing and what is missing at each state. And I think Amanda mentioned this earlier, the subject matter experts from different perspectives. It's always going to be important to bring those in. Also, different users who will be impacted. And then I think a big piece of it, right, is that continued funding, the infrastructure, creating space for first-time entrepreneurs to grow and to develop, but also for digital health technologies to be tested and to understand who is missing and to grow for those individuals. So both the insurance funding piece and the reimbursement and the investment, all of those are really important things. A big question that we get asked is, who is going to pay for this? You ask for more time, but who is paying? And I think, the reverse question I would like to ask you all and for you to go out with, who's going to pay for those increased inequities if we leave people out and if we leave those barriers in place? So just pause there.
No, that's great. What a great session. Again, if there's anyone in the audience who has any questions at all, please directly email her or just send her a LinkedIn message, connect with her on LinkedIn. You've got her LinkedIn link in the chat box for the session here. And again, thank you so much for joining us today. Just a tremendous amount of work you're doing, and really appreciate all you're contributing to the ecosystem.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, please. And then next up, we have another ecosystem stakeholder leader within the New York City metro area, Dr. David Berger, the CEO of SUNY Downstate Medical Center, and someone who's been contributing not only as an executive leader, but as a clinical leader in medicine and healthcare delivery over the last 40 years. And really appreciate his giving some time and some energy to the program today, given everything that he's got going on. Just an incredibly busy schedule, and certainly our community appreciates that. Dr. Berger, welcome to the program. And David, can you hear me?
Thanks, Stan. Can I get the ability to share my screen?
Yeah, we can see you now. You are live and you are good.
You see me? There we go.
Joining in today, and if you could start with just a little bit of background on yourself and share some of your journey to the HITLAB community here.
Sure. So we'll start here. So anyone who wants to connect, feel free to use the QR code. So I am a surgeon by training. I am a general surgeon and surgical oncologist and trained at MD Anderson. I just get to the slideshow. I've been in hospital administration now for about 20 years. I've been the CEO at SUNY Downstate since 2020, came in after the first wave of the COVID pandemic. And my job was really to turn around the academic medical center. And a large part of turning around the academic medical center is relying on and using digital tools to better deliver patient care. So that's a little bit about me. I know we're running a little behind, so I'll try to get us a little bit back on time. And I want to just talk a little bit about how I look at implementing artificial intelligence. So as everyone knows on this meeting, artificial intelligence has exploded in the last several months with OpenAI, ChatGPT, and the various other large language models that are out there. I cannot go a day without being solicited by at least 3 new AI companies trying to sell me something and sell something to my hospital and to my health system. So I think it's important to start thinking about how we actually evaluate and decide what AI solutions we're going to implement within healthcare. So the first thing we need to think about as healthcare leaders is, what's the problem we're going to tackle? Is there strategic alignment between either the product or the question that's come up and been raised by either our clinicians or our staff with the strategy of the hospital? Secondly, when we're thinking about what problem to tackle, will there be a measurable impact? Specifically, will there be a change in finance? Will there be a change in the number of patients we see? Will there be a change in our quality metrics? Third thing that is really important nowadays is, will AI augment or replace human interactions? Because we are uncertain on what the appetite is for people to directly, continuously interact with computers versus interacting with humans, especially in the healthcare setting. And then, are we actually replacing humans and potentially putting people out of work? So, and then the fourth thing in terms of thinking about the problem, is this a problem that we really need AI to solve? Is there another way to get at this that's simpler? And is AI really the solution, or is it just a fad and something that sounds really fancy for us to do? And then finally, when we're thinking about a problem to tackle, is, are there the necessary organizational resources in place to be able to implement the AI solution that we're thinking about? So we had a problem, and the problem was being able to contact our patients after they were discharged to make sure they got their medications, they had all their follow-up appointments, etc. What we were doing, we were using advanced nurses to call patients and try to reach them and make sure everything was okay. We were only reaching about 40 or 45% of our patients with these phone calls. And we were using two highly qualified, very expensive FTEs to try to get this done. So I thought this was pretty simple. It was aligned with strategically with trying to reduce our readmissions, to increase our hospital satisfaction scores. It was going to relieve people of unnecessary repetitive work. So sounded like a great solution. So we started on a journey to implement AI chatbots that communicate with our patients by SMS text. What we started to find out when we did this was that there were a whole host of organizational resources necessary in order to make this implementation successful. And we've been working almost 7 months to get the implementation lined up. And I'll talk a little bit about implementation later as we continue in our framework. So the first thing is, what's the problem to tackle? Second thing with AI, is the data available? Well, right now, you need less data than previous, when AI was just becoming important, before a lot of the foundational models were coming out, and all the data needed to be annotated. Now, with a lot of the foundational models, you need less data, but what has happened is that these foundational models are often a black box, and we don't know where the data has come from or what data is being used. And this can potentially lead to unintended bias in healthcare if populations that you're interested in taking care of are underrepresented in some of these models. So you need to know what data you have within your system. If you need data to populate these models, you also really need to have transparency into some of the foundational models to understand what data is being used in those models. This is really critical when you're thinking about any implementation or any AI solution. Who are the stakeholders? Who is going to use the system? Who is going to be affected by the system? And who are the people potentially being displaced by the system? So again, back to our implementation of our AI solution to contact patients. So one set of stakeholders was our patients. Second set of stakeholders were our nurses who were communicating with the patients. Third are the doctors who write the discharge and make sure that the patients are getting their medications and their follow-up. Some of the stakeholders that we didn't understand were actually our legal office, as well as our registrars. So we initially thought, okay, we have a business agreement with the company. They can then contact the patients and it wouldn't be any problem. Well, when we went to our lawyers, they quickly said, no, 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 no. You are sharing potentially data with an outside company. You need permission from the patients in order to have a third party act as the contact for them when they get discharged. So then a whole new set of stakeholders became involved. And those are our registrars. And those are our clerks on the floor to see which of the patients actually agreed to being contacted versus those patients who did not want to be contacted. So it's very important upfront to understand who are all the stakeholders involved when implementing any type of AI solution. This is important, especially when you're using AI for clinical decision making. It's less important in the example I gave in terms of the transparency. But if you were using AI to, for example, read mammograms, the physicians, first of all, the radiologists, but also the patients, as well as the doctors referring the patients for mammography are going to want to know how you came to be able to have a computer read a mammogram, and are the results from the computer as good as the radiologist. So you need to be able to ensure transparency into the model and into what the model is doing. Again, back to our solution with contacting our patients using the AI chatbots is, what is the implementation strategy? So in our case, we significantly underestimated the implementation strategy because we didn't account for all the stakeholders early on. But we took a step back and we went through it and we were able to get over all the hurdles. But what was key in terms of our implementation strategy was, once we identified all the stakeholders, we made sure they all had input into the process. And measuring whether your implementation is successful is the final important key to the whole picture. And that's not just waiting till the end to seeing if it worked and you were able to generate the data you wanted to generate, but there should be steps along the way and along the path, especially if you're implementing AI in decision-making for an important healthcare issue. And go back to the example around mammography. So AI reading mammography did not start out by just reading mammograms. What the initial approach was looking at the problem of reading breast density. And what they found was that there was significant discordance amongst radiologists reading breast density.
This is great. We've got about 1 minute left, Dr. Berger.
They identified that breast density was an important factor in breast cancer risk. And instead of starting with reading the mammography, they started with reading whether there was dense breasts on the mammography, and they were able to show success at that. And then that was the first step in being able to go to implementing AI to help read mammograms. So I will stop there and take any questions, but I wanted to just walk you through how, as a healthcare leader, I start thinking about these implementation of these AI solutions.
Yeah, this is great. And you're right, there are so many of them, and the ecosystem is filled with them, and there's really not enough room in 10 years for all of them. So there will clearly be a significant thinning of these options for people over the next 10 years, over the next 5 years. And so the ability to have evidence, remember, for the audience here, evidence has to drive your decision making. If it's not evidence-based decision making, then it's probably going to lead you astray. So think about that as you're driving forward here. Again, Dr. Berger, wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. We know how busy you are running such an important institution in the New York metro area and nationally, that we greatly appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Stan.
So again, it's an incredible lineup today that we have here for you, our HITLAB community, to be able to better understand and witness how not only is digital health being deployed, how is it being evaluated and selected and actually even identified to begin with, moving up the value chain. So next up, we have an important digital health leader to talk about what's happening within the health plan ecosystem. This is Gregory Ryder. He's with Emblem Health and NYU Langone. He's going to be interviewed by HITLAB's only Riley Fink out of our Seattle office. Riley, good to have you here today. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Dan.
Throwing it over to you and take it away.
Excellent. Well, Greg, thanks for joining us. Great to see you. And let's just go ahead and start with your introduction to the audience and give a little bit about your background, please.
Sure. Hi, good afternoon, Riley. Great to be here. I'm currently actually Director of Corporate Compliance at Emblem Health. My previous position was at NYU Langone Medical Center. So I'm primarily responsible for corporate governance, compliance policies, compliance training, conflict of interest, those types of things. But my passion project here is as the founder and leader of our LGBTQ employee resource group. And we've really been able to partner with our companies, with our communities, to try to make an impact in the digital health and actually the whole space of wellness and health for LGBTQ clients and patients within the metro area of New York City, but also within the greater Hartford area of Connecticut. And then certainly we've got some medical offices affiliated with us out on Long Island.
That's amazing. And certainly I'm definitely aware that you're having a lot of a success, but what are some of the key challenges that are faced by individuals in that community in accessing healthcare, and how can they be addressed through inclusive policies and practices?
Good question, Riley. Well, I don't think that I don't need to belabor this point, but I do need to start out by saying that the current climate, particularly in the US and in other parts of the world, there's lots of anti-gay discrimination, not just within healthcare, but in all parts of society. So that's sort of this context that we find ourselves living in. In fact, one of the leading national organization for LGBTQ folks, the Human Rights Campaign, HRC, early this year issued a state of emergency for LGBTQ patients and people. So that's sort of the environment. Specifically, we're finding that overall, 35% of LGBTQ folks have postponed or avoided healthcare for any number of reasons due to finances, discrimination, perceived or anticipated discrimination. 40% have actually experienced discrimination from their providers. 43% have experienced general depression. 50 to 75% more than the general population are using emergency department care for general health. And we also find that there are higher percentages among this population for smoking, substance abuse disorder, as opposed to the general population. So that's sort of a grim sort of look, but there are all kinds of ways that we're finding providers, just simple things such as ensuring that you address patients by their pronouns, by their preferred name. The title of my talk mentioned SOGI, which is sexual orientation, gender identity. By capturing that type of information for transgender patients, they can go to their own patient portal. They can list their preferred name, their legal name. If they're in any stages of gender affirmation surgery, they can put that information in there as well. It's all about having a great relationship of trust and openness among LGBTQ patients and their providers.
Yeah, thank you for sharing some of those statistics around, just some of the consequences of not addressing these inclusive policies. So can you kind of further elaborate on, if you don't include SOGI in healthcare, how does that impact the patient's well-being and further, create healthcare disparities? You mentioned that you want to create that environment of trust. So what's the importance if they aren't addressed? What are some further consequences?
Well, I mean, I think, it's generally the consequences would be what happens when people don't take care of themselves. Wellness, I mean, certainly suicide ideation. For instance, many transgender patients, F2M, they still may need a regular mammogram. And if they're not getting that, there's all kinds of complications and issues. If providers aren't really having a non-judgmental discussion with gay men, for instance, about their sexual health, well, they may be missing out on being able to ensure prevention and proper care regarding, for instance, we just recently had the Mpox pandemic and HIV. So those are the types of things that don't get addressed. And erosion of trust, patients will, if they've had one bad experience, they're not going to show back up to their provider. And who knows what kind of serious health consequences will come as a result of them not seeking care.
And how can healthcare providers better integrate some of these practices? Certainly, we see the consequences of not addressing patients by their preferred pronouns, but how can a healthcare provider today work to better integrate these types of practices to create a more inclusive and respectful healthcare environment?
Good question, Wiley. I think it starts with some of the same ways that they connect with all their other patients. It's approaching them as a unique individual. It's not considering them as different than. So if you ask a non-gay patient, how are they, how's their family, you would do the same thing. Are they married? Do they have a husband? If they're gay man, if they're lesbian, do they have a wife? Not being afraid and not putting them in a separate box. It's referring to their preferred pronouns. And I would say even at the office level, some of the things that you can do is, in the office, you've got pictures of patients and families. Make sure you include same-sex couples. Include, people at Pride celebrations, as well as any other, patient populations. As far as, make sure you show diversity in your imagery. And how you promote your services on printing material on websites. It's being part of the community. Look out to connect with community organizations that are focused on LGBTQ patients. Offer to speak with them. Offer to participate in Pride or National Coming Out Day focused events and educational opportunities.
Absolutely. And can you share? I know we're running a little behind. I'll get you out here on this. Can you share some of your successful initiatives or best practices that you've seen so far that have led to increased inclusivity in healthcare? And kind of what are some of the lessons learned from those experiences?
Well, I think, one of the things that I think is very important is to have face-to-face some type of patient education session with your clinical staff, including the receptionists and the folks that greet patients. It can be simple as LGBT 101, these are things to know about, review terms, transgender, gay, lesbian, bisexual, what's the difference between birth sex, legal sex, your given name, all those types of things. And they don't need to be exhaustive and cumbersome. Cater them, customized to your individual office locations. One of the things that we do with PRISM is we started a healthcare coalition where we quarterly invite healthcare providers, social service agencies, just to come together in a safe space to share best practices, to discuss opportunities. How can we partner? I'm happy to say that Mount Sinai Health is one of our partners, and my primary care provider has been part of that network. And so he knows all about me, my history, my husband, my sexual health, all of those. Regularly look at your policies. Make sure that for a simple thing as you don't replace his and her in your policy language with their or other gender neutral language. Invite external organizations to come in for Pride Day, National Coming Out Day.
Yeah, I think those are some very simple. And if you don't have an ERG or a DEI capsule, look to start one so that you're addressing not just the unique needs of your LGBTQ patients and customers, but all other diverse segments and populations of your customer base and patient base.
Thank you. That's amazing. You want to treat others the way you would want to be treated, and it starts by having an invested sense of interest and earnest in who they are and what their experiences are, and then representing that, among your other providers. So thank you for sharing everything. It's been very impactful and very insightful. And with that, Stan, I will kick it back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Riley. Thank you, Greg, and please continue all the good work you're doing at Emblem. Really appreciate it. And let's continue on, everyone. We've got a great half hour lined up, actually 20 minutes. We're going to take it to like 25 minutes left to go here. And we're going to kick it over to Brian Bertha, HITLAB's Global Fellow in Strategy Innovation, and leading the way for a lot of great advisory work on the advisory team for HITLAB. So kicking it over to Brian. Brian is going to interview Takeda, CEO and President USA Takeda, and his former colleague from Baxter. Brian, Julie? I think we're having some volume issues.
In Europe and in Asia and in the US for about 5 years. And then I joined Baxter Healthcare. I always wanted to work in healthcare, a deep conviction in helping improve public health. And while I was there, I ended up beginning a strategy group. A lot of people with great strategic backgrounds like Julie, she can comment on. And we were able to work on a lot of the internal issues and opportunities in a way that was, we thought, more responsive and helpful to the company because we were part of it and knew the teams and could ensure a lasting effect, and also, frankly, a whole lot less expensive than outside consultancies. So I joined there in 99, actually started in Vienna, Austria, post-merger integration of half of what was then Baxter Bioscience. Started creating the team. Julie joined shortly thereafter, and we'll talk about some projects in a second. But Julie, you want to do a quick intro?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. And very happy to be here with you as well. So I also started out in consulting and healthcare consulting, did that for just over 7 years before joining Baxter. And when people ask me about this transition, I always tell them that I didn't want to go to industry. I had this view of industry being very slow and bureaucratic, and consulting was more fast-paced and interesting. But you convinced me, Brian. And so I joined Baxter. And since then, I had many different roles, different geographies. The company went through a spin-off, acquisition, and that's how I landed here at Takeda. And today, I'm responsible for the U.S. business at Takeda.
Yeah, it's interesting. Julie and I and a few other great people that we've managed to get into the organization really were excited about applying the issues in healthcare. Baxter had some interesting questions around the economics of fractionating blood, and when one product's more in demand, how it affects others, and different supply chains for different geographies, and a lot of really interesting projects. Julie brought a tremendous amount of insights on the marketing and the sales side, and she really helped implement one of our most exciting projects. We'd gone through one of my early roles was they created a role for a head of e-business when that became a thing in the very late 90s, early 2000s. And we looked at across the whole value chain of opportunities. And one of them was compliance. And how do we increase compliance? And how can we leverage the then most advanced tools, which was essentially the internet? This is all pre-app, most of the technologies that we enjoy today. But we knew that we had the ability to leverage some technology to get to basically allow doctors that see patients, let's say every 6 months, to have a way of knowing when they're less compliant. And then when they know that, to have the system do automatic prompts, to have people on their staff that are lower cost to be prompted to contact them. And it was a really interesting project. that we took from sort of conception and idea to how do we apply it in a Baxter environment. And it was great having Julie because she's the one who was actually able to implement it. Can you comment on that a little bit, Julie?
Yeah, and maybe I'll give one specific example to bring it to life. One of the areas that we decided to implement this platform was in Taiwan. So this is a country that had really good standard of care for these patients, but for the first time was creating a comprehensive treatment center. And so they wanted to have this platform as part of how they manage their patients. And, as you said, this was before the time of apps and everything that we have today. So, the patients were being treated in hospital. So some of the challenges that you mentioned from a compliance standpoint didn't exist at the moment for them, but they wanted to be able to move to home treatment. But the concern was around the compliance and patients using the product appropriately and being able to report what they were experiencing when they were infusing the medicine. And so this platform was to be that bridge for them. And so implementing it in the center and figuring out how to have it interface with the hospital medical records, how to interface with the information that they needed to collect at home, and what if they didn't have an internet connection. And this was still back in the day where you had to use dial-up to connect, and so we had to have a parallel offline process for patients who either didn't have internet connection or had intermittent connection and therefore needed to bring in paper and then input all of the information onto the platform in the center. So it was trying to connect the digital world with the analog world, because we were at a time where we didn't have everything that we have available to us today. So I think it was a little bit ahead of its time, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I love your examples because it reminds us, that the same problems that existed then exist today, right? How do you get data into a system? How do you allow people to enter the data once as close to the system as possible? How do you do it in an efficient way? How do you do it in a way that doesn't prevent the provider from being a provider? And we were dealing with a lot of the same issues. Now, of course, we've got much more connectivity. Back then, we had far fewer tools. We had the internet. We were starting to try to leverage mobile tools. At the time, we had a Palm Pilot application where the Palm Pilot connected to a reader could begin to read some of the barcodes off the sides of in this case, it was hemophilia factor bottles. So, we were doing our best to leverage technology. And when you didn't have the real time, you had to have the offline, as you mentioned. So it was a fascinating project. It's probably worth mentioning, since we're at a HITLAB conference, the role of HITLAB in this. They were incredibly helpful because as we were doing this and collecting the data, and Julie mentioned Taiwan, there was work being done in Canada, in the UK. They were able to collect the data, create the white papers, speak at some of the conferences, create awareness among different populations, diffuse, as we like to say. And it really made a difference because we ended up having white papers that eventually would turn into publications and greater awareness and greater credibility. So I think that's an important thing to add. And I guess it's also worth reminiscing a little bit about, how exciting it is to be where we are now. Because think, Julie, if we had AI, if we had the universal connectivity, if we had mobile phones, if we had apps, it's just amazing how much the technology landscape has advanced.
But I would say, though, some of the challenges I was mentioning, and as you rightly pointed out, still exist today. And if you look at, particularly from the lens of health equity, and let's just talk about the U.S.
Yes.
Most people think of the U.S. being such an advanced country, but as you and I both know, there are, whether it's healthcare deserts, internet deserts, all sorts of challenges across the U.S. in terms of being able to access all of this wonderful technology that exists today. So I think that's part of the challenge that we all need to figure out. How do we not leave people behind so that as these advances in technology support better health outcomes, that it is being equitably accessed by everyone? And so I think we still need to think about, okay, yeah, great if you've got high-speed internet access and you've got access to all of these other tools, but if you don't, how do we make sure that those individuals can also stay connected and use all of the technology.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because you do remind us all, right? It's not just the technologies. Yes, the phones exist, the internet exists, but do you have a representative, sample of the population on the trial side, and then on the use and compliance? I'm currently on a board with a company called the Health Tree Foundation, and they worked very hard to get patients to be willing to share data such that it would be available to other patients. They started in myeloma, but the idea is that, I can find a like-minded person or a person similar to me, right? If I'm refractory to this, I'm this age, this gender, try these sorts of medications. What would the people at Stanford, Harvard, different doctors in different places say? And they literally did like a 50-state tour, going and talking to patient groups and getting them to put their data in. But in the end, you do end up with, it's predominantly, people of a single ethnicity. And so part of the, and as you know, there's more and more of an emphasis, not just in the provision of care, but also in the doing trials to make sure that we are better demographically represented. And so we're making a lot of efforts to reach out and to include other, a broader array of better representation. And it's challenging, right? Because there's different levels of trust. It's not just, it's access, it's trust, it's awareness, it's a lot of aspects.
Exactly. And I do think we need to think about that whole environment, that whole ecosystem, when we think about how do we continue to innovate and create more digital health technologies to support better health for people. And so this is, I think, the ask of the crowd that's listening to this is, don't just think about the technology itself that you're trying to develop. Think about the whole environment that technology needs to sit within, and how you can create equitable access to that technology. And also, the other hot topic these days around data privacy, et cetera, make sure that you've got all of the right security built in to protect individuals as they interface with whatever it is that you create.
Well put. I think this issue you raise is an interesting one. Is how do we make sure technology is really inclusive, and how do we get better representation? It's an issue. As I mentioned, we saw it we see it with Health Tree Foundation in the myeloma cancer space. I know when I worked with the Diabetes Association, it was also a common issue. It really requires being thoughtful about how do different groups of people, different ethnicities, how do they think about healthcare? How is it provided? Who do they trust, right? Who do they look to? And I think it's a challenge for the whole pharma industry to, get patients comfortable that data is being used responsibly and in their best interest. I'm from the pharma industry, so I think that a lot of the biases, as you are, I think a lot of the biases are historic and probably not necessarily valid in this day and age, but they exist, right? And perception is reality, and we have to work through it.
Yeah, and I think it's incumbent upon all of us to be aware and to each do our parts, but recognize that this is a big, complex problem that we can't necessarily solve as individuals or as individual companies. And so reaching across and working, with others is going to be the approach that we'll have to take. And so, again, I'm sure there's lots of people out there in the audience who come from a variety of different angles. I would just also encourage you to collaborate, because I think that's the way that we'll be able to get some traction and to address some of these challenges. Because let's face it, the technology is going to continue to advance much faster than things like regulation and policies and whatnot. So we've got to do it responsibly. And agencies like the FDA and others around the globe, they'll be in constant catch up, I believe, going forward.
I think that's right. Well, Julie, I think you've issued a good challenge to all of us. So Stan and the HITLAB team, and everyone there at the conference, we hope things go well, and we hope that you're able to make significant advances along the digital continuum, as well as, attitudes and access, as we've discussed. So have a great meeting.
That's super. Really well done. Again, thank you both, Julie and Brian, for a tremendous interview. And again, illuminating a lot of what we're facing as a digital health community, as a scientific community, as an entrepreneurial community. and very nicely highlighting that we all have to work together to get this done, because free market healthcare in the United States is not coordinated and it is not free. So we've got to make sure we can actually make it work, and that's going to take a lot of alignment. Next up, to wrap up an amazing day, it's an amazing panel led by an amazing gentleman, Jerry Antamano, HITLAB's own, the head of community development, and here to talk to 3 ecosystem stakeholders from AbbVie, P&G and Lilly. Jerry, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks so much, Stan. I think it's only fitting that we have 3 really dynamic individuals from 3 powerhouse companies to really round off not only the Digital Health Human Rights Symposium today, but also the last symposium for the year, in fact. So it's my pleasure to be able to moderate this panel with Olivia, Vladimir, and Christian Genius. They'll be talking about digital health disparities and bridging that gap for better public health. So let's really open Olivia, Christian, and Vladimir with some very quick introductions. If you guys want to just start off, give us 30-second introductions on what you guys do, where you're from, and where you're doing it. So Olivia, we'll start off with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jerry, for a great introduction. My name is Olivia Genius. I am currently the Associate Director within Medical Affairs at Eli Lilly and Company. I support the US and Global Migraine Neuroscience team, as well as the Congress Strategy Planning. And originally, I'm from Boston, but currently in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Wonderful. Thanks, Olivia. Great to have you on the program. And Christian?
Hi, thank you so much, Jerry, for having us. And we're very appreciative and very excited to be part of the Digital Symposium. And I think we also are very grateful to be adding to the conversation at hand. So I'm Christian Genius. I am a research scientist and statistician in the corporate R&D at Procter & Gamble. I support global product safety, bioscience, and biotechnology, where I develop mathematical and statistical models to leverage decision-making. And I'm currently based in Cincinnati, Ohio, but originally from Boston.
Wonderful. Thanks, Christian. And Vladimir, last but certainly not least.
Thank you, Jerry. It's nice meeting you. And again, just like my siblings mentioned, I'm really happy to be here. I'm Vladimir Genius. I'm a clinical research scientist or projects statistician at AbbVie, where I basically set up clinical trial designs, check in on methodology, contact regulatory personnel, and do a little bit of med affairs. I'm obviously in statistics, so I handle the stats for all of that. So happy to be here.
No, wonderful. It's really wonderful to have all 3 of you here. And I know we don't have much time because we are coming to the close, so we'll just get right into it and just ask for all 3 of your viewpoints on the current sort of socio determinants of health in public health at the moment and how they're affecting the what we call the digital divide within the field.
I think I can start with that. Thank you so much for the question, and it's a very important one. And to accurately answer the question, it's very important that we define what social determinants are. And social determinants are, non-medical factors that influence and affect not only the distribution, but also the average health in the population. And these social determinants are multifaceted, and they encompass political, institutional, cultural factors, physical environment, the socioeconomic and social demographic, as well as your family, work, and social networks. So ultimately, in order to improve population health, public health must, focus on those social determinants. So, but
absolutely,
yeah. Olivia, Vladimir.
Yeah, no, I was going to say absolutely. And with the definition of social determinants in mind, the effect of digital divide within public health have only just magnified the social determinants affecting health. And those same social determinants that impact population health is also reflected as a result of the digital divide, where there exists an inequality in access to internet and technology. And it's also important to keep in mind that populations that have poor health outcomes, we see that they continue to have poor health outcomes despite the new technological advancement and improvement. So it's really important to narrow that gap and not leave anybody behind.
Yeah,
super important.
Just I was just gonna say, to kind of like fit in, to put things in perspective. So if you look at education, for example, overall literacy, if you look at the levels or degrees of digital literacy amongst people, or the inconsistent or unavailable education regarding technology, all these things are going to contribute to that digital divide within public health. So I think Chris and Olivia explained it well.
Yeah, no, absolutely, really, really important points to to really highlight and bring to light. Let's talk a little bit about the consequences that contribute to that digital divide, and from your viewpoints, sort of what those consequences are and how they're contributing.
Well, I'll just tackle that, because we just talked about that digital divide. When we are explaining what digital divide means, it's that existing divide between people who do have access to internet-related programs, information communication technologies, and those that don't, or might have it within a limiting capacity, right? And factors contributing to those are going to be access to the devices. It might be costly. Access to the services might be costly. The devices might be complicated. So you might have access to all of these and might not be able to use them. And overall, the infrastructure within your area or region might not be as strong for these devices. So all of those are contributing to, I guess, that digital divide, right? Yeah. I don't know if you guys want to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And given the factors that Vladimir just elaborated on, difficulty in accessing information and communication technologies increases inequality among different groups, and it prevents the part of the population from accessing the possibilities that they can offer. If we take a look, for example, during the COVID-19 lockdown, where we saw many students being essentially forced to transition from in-person learning to remote learning and take online courses, the lack of stable connection and the appropriate devices met for some students were unable to keep up with their classes. And the same occurred with remote workers, where adults who lacked the right tools and even the know-how were also limited in their ability to work as normal.
Very true.
Kristen, do you have a last comment to add to that?
No, Olivia and Vladimir definitely covered the overall digital divide and the causes of the digital divide, as well as the consequences. So we just need to make sure that when we're narrowing the gap, we take into consideration all of those causes and considerations.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm really sorry we couldn't have to spend more time with you guys. There's so much more I know we can definitely get through, and so many facets that we can definitely talk about, especially with all three of you on the panel today. But fear not, Olivia, Christian's, and Vladimir's details are all in the chat if you guys want to continue this really critical conversation with them. And a little bird has told me that they will also be at the November summit as well. So if you want to both hear about the amazing impact that they're making in terms of bridging that gap, you can meet them at the at the summit in November. And you can also see them online if you're unable to make it too. The details for that are also in the chat. But it was a real pleasure being able to speak with you guys today on such an important subject. Please do come back again, which you are in November. And it's been really, our first time in HITLAB's history that not only we had three really wonderful leaders within this healthcare space in three different companies, but three that are related. So, you know, it's a real blessing to the community and to your families, of course, to have three wonderful people making such an impact today.
Thank you so much.
We're very blessed.
Thank you so much. Stan, over to you.
Oh, thank you, Jerry. And that's it, everybody. We appreciate everything that everyone's done to pull this together today. And on that note, we're going to close out the last symposium of the year, 2023. We will see you all in 2024. Have a great day. Take care.